Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Smith, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Pickens, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Present.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes quorum.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we've done some homework last night, as you all directed us to. It's pretty interesting that we were going to assign you all homework, and at the end of the day, we were the ones who picked up the homework piece.
I did some homework.
Well, good for you.
That's right.
And we appreciate your input, Commissioner. What we're going to do today is go over some of the things that we talked about yesterday. We've laid some information out in front of you that we'll be talking about, asking you to fill in some blanks. It's a document that looks like this. It's at your desk. So with that, Jack, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming back. It doesn't always happen that way, you know.
I understand.
Yeah. Thanks for not saying, I understand, J.D. He did, I know. So here's what we had for the agenda. We actually got done more than I thought we would get done yesterday, so it was a good day. And I don't think today will be a full day.
Hope not.
Hate that. Hate when that happens. So we looked at the process we're going through. We talked about the mission and got input on the mission, and I think we have enough to refine it, actually shrink it a bit, and we'll do that. Went over who we talked to and what we talked about, line item by line item, and then on here you brainstormed, collective you brainstormed all the potential goals and asked us to try to get it down to 5 or 6, and we did. And so that's what we want to review this morning. And so the idea would be, I think if we could fill that sheet out that's in front of you, it has goals. So think of the goals as 5-year goals. Think of the objectives as perhaps less than that, maybe 2 to 3 years. And think of the initiatives as variable. I mean, certainly if you have a strategic transportation plan that you want to do and execute, that's not going to happen in a year. But the initiatives are more like projects, right? They have milestones, they have owners, they have budgets, and they are the things that you do to help achieve your objectives, which then help you get closer to your goals. The missing piece on here is metrics, and I'm just going to introduce those today. That's right here. And get your ideas on a couple of ways we might know when we're getting closer to achieving the goals. But really, I think we'll work with directors, staff, to define goals both at the top level, at the goal level, but also at the department level. So my thank yous for being focused and getting a lot done yesterday so that we're hitting the ground running today. So I think we're ready to move to that document in front of you, unless there's any questions. So the 6 goals, I think there were 6, right, that we came up with? And we knew there'd be some heavy discussion on number 3 and probably a vote, and that's okay. But number 1, improve financial strength. What we tried to do, by the way, is you've got a second page on the document, and those were yours. They're basically right off the flip charts. And so we did a cross-check to see if we got everything. You can make that decision yourself, too. So the first one was, I think the discussion was around maintain financial strength, and then somebody says, why don't we put improve it? And so the subsets of that, we thought, objective-wise, would be economic development. One of you mentioned that. And then the other one might be some kind of a financial measure, and so we said maintain sufficient reserves. You can debate that or tell us what you think it is, if that's not correct. Again, if we achieve these 2 things, we'll contribute heavily to that. And there will be ways to do this, and we'll talk about the ways, brainstorm ways to do that These initiatives, then, as I mentioned yesterday, will be refined by GK's staff and brought back to you for approval. But today, we'd like to at least brainstorm those when we.
It would seem to me like before we can evaluate or before we can set goals or initiatives, we need to establish baselines that we're going to be judged against.
You mean like metrics, Glenn?
Metrics.
Metrics, baseline, whatever you want to call it. If we're going to improve financial strength, then we got to know where we are right now. And when we say that, do we mean just in cash on hand? Do we mean that in less debt? Do we mean that in less liabilities? Where are we now? And so we have to establish, just again, whether it be metrics or baselines in each one of the areas that we're talking about. It would seem like we've got to have something that we're judging ourselves against.
So if we want to, that's kind of the metrics discussion. And if you want to move to that now to give yourself a feel for what do we mean by financial strength, right? Then we can do that in tandem. Improved financial strength. How would we measure that?
Well, I would think that first off, we've got to determine whether we agree with the 6 that you've put up there.
Okay, we'll go through them first. Okay.
And once we've kind of come to that conclusion, then we begin to define what we mean. If financial strength is one of the things that we pick, then we've got to define exactly what we mean and then establish the baseline of exactly what we meant.
I agree. So you want to go through the goals first, right? Okay. Okay, so the second one was improve employee well-being. We had that originally as improve employee satisfaction, switched it over to well-being. Some of the issues in there were training, compensation and benefits, financial well-being, which we thought maybe was included in compensation and benefits, retirement planning, which we thought also was included in this, but you can disagree.
I think I will.
Okay.
Because I think when people think of compensation and benefits, they think of what I'm being paid today and what benefits I receive today, and they're not focused on where am I going to be somewhere into the future. So I don't think compensation and benefits doesn't talk a bit about where are they from a health standpoint. Are we offering a set of benefits, or are we really trying to move them to a healthier state in their being?
So that's what you want, retirement planning?
Well, I want retirement planning, and I want overall physical, mental health.
Okay. Do you want it stated that way?
I don't care how you state it.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted just overall health or...
I mean, I think we can wordsmith it, but what I'm saying is compensation and benefits are what everybody looks at and I think focuses on currently, but I'm more concerned about looking down the line that I want them to get healthier, and I want them to begin to understand why it's necessary to be prepared for retirement, as well as what are they doing currently with their finances.
Okay. Next one, continue to grow both human and capital infrastructure. I realize there's a discussion about whether we have these in the same or...
Can we just vote to whether we want to split them or keep them together?
I think that's what we have to do, yep.
How many want to split them? How many want to keep them together? I guess everybody else wants to keep them together.
I want to split them.
What?
Well, Gary wants to split them.
Okay, let's ask this question one more time. How many of you want to split them?
3.
3. We split them.
We'll split them.
Next item.
Wait. Next item under number 3.
In 3. We're still in 3, Commissioner Brooks, yeah.
I mean, I think we've agreed to split it. Now, whether we now have 7 or whether we now have what, but I think we're saying we're going to split it. And I really think that the split is human capital, infrastructure, and then I think we put in there someplace, I thought Space Master Plan to me is that's a third set of capital.
So we can move these the way you want, but I was thinking we would take 3 and make it into 2, so we now have 7, right? And then the capital one would include, and you can adjust this, includes transportation, and space, and the human would include health and quality of life.
But let me ask, when we talk about human capital, are
Well,
we
this-
talking about human capital within the county, within our county employees, or are we talking about human capital outside of our county family?
I thought this was
This is
outside,
Outside. This is an external effect.
like healthcare.
Number 2 takes care of the county
Right,
family.
that's right, that's the way I thought.
But under number 3 as amended, as split, I would like to add technology as one of those critical pieces of capital infrastructure.
Okay, so, all right, so number 3 is, let's just reconstruct it, and I'll clean it up at a break. Continue to grow. Do you want it as human capital or human infrastructure?
Well, let me ask this quick. If we're talking about it being, that I'm assuming we're talking about within the county.
No, this one is number 3. This is,
Well,
oh,
he said technology. His comment was just
oh,
over
the
technology.
technology is in the county. The human is out.
Why would it not be under number 5?
It is, isn't it?
In fact, we have technology in them.
We have technology in number 5 and 6. Yeah.
All right, fine. I will withdraw.
Okay. Yeah, we felt like technology cuts across actually more than probably even 2.
I just want to make sure that it is emphasized because it's critical.
We need to clarify grow. What do you mean? A goal is a destination where we want to be, to achieve, and continue to grow both human and capital infrastructure. Seems to me is an action item that we do. And do we really want to continue to grow capital? Keep growing and keep growing and
You're
keep
still
growing?
trying to build a highway out there.
Well, we could say improve.
And I guess if we're talking about outside of the county, then I think we have somewhere, maybe we don't. Is that where we're talking about, we would be talking about the overall health of the residents?
Yeah, so this one links to human, as does quality of life, I think. And Space Master Plan and Transportation link to capital infrastructure.
But see, I see the Space Master Plan as being, and the struggle that I'm having in a lot of instances, some of these things we're talking about internal and some of these things we're talking about external. And the master plan I see as an internal deal. I don't know whether that goes with financial strength. It probably doesn't, but it certainly might be a part of that.
Wouldn't that be better called facility master plan or facilities master plan?
I think so.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying, Judge. So where is the best place for the Facilities Master Plan?
Under
And I-
infrastructure?
Which one, human or capital?
Well,
See, one of
I'm
Human is outside.
capital, but I don't know that capital is the word.
You don't need to try to stir something up.
Oh, I wasn't. What do you mean?
How is a facilities plan going to be human infrastructure?
Oh, so you can you'll have the facilities to serve the customers better.
Well, that's not how,
But, Judge,
that's not what I meant when I said facilities.
No.
It would be under capital infrastructure. I'm just not sure that capital is the proper word, but that's fine.
Well, we can change it.
It's not human.
Okay.
Again, and I think this may be part of where we end up going with when we're trying to set our goals is, when we talk about internal and external, they're two separate goals, and whether or not we want to make that one of our five, I mean, anytime I think we're dealing with external and internal, that's two different deals. And so we could go from 5 goals to 10 goals if we're not careful, or we could, and I think as a court, we've got to determine where our emphasis and where our focus is going to be.
Should we call this resident?
You know, we can have a debate of whether we call them citizens or residents or constituents or whatever.
But something that doesn't just say human, which could be either, right? That's what I was getting at.
I thought we were talking about our employees.
And see, that's where
And our potential employees and what we do to empower our employees to help them do a better job, and would not be, quote, the residences. Now, under health of our residents, I think, is an important issue. Not sure it goes under, if we're talking about our employees.
Can I?
The issue that would solve this, what we tried to do last night, and it was for discussion purposes, and that's what we're having now, is to take everything that you all put up as a potential goal and break that down into 6 broad categories. Judge, you're right. What we did, we included in some of those, for example, financial strength, both an internal piece and an external piece. I think the way to clarify that is to not group both internal and external the same, but break them out. You're going to have more goals, but it will find you a more convenient home to place these various things.
And if we ultimately decide that we want to limit our goals to 5, then we may have to give up some internal, or we may have to give up some external in order to meet whatever our focus wants to end up being.
Or you want to prioritize them. It depends how you want to skin that.
I agree.
Can I did some homework, so may I share?
So you want to show the rest of us up?
No, I just for the purpose of discussion, and feel free to
Go ahead.
to dissect it any way you wanted to, because I really took the time to sit down and looked at all the things that we put on the board yesterday, and I sum it up as follows. We have 3 internal goals and 3 external goals, a total of 6. First one is improve the Tarrant County's financial strength and effectiveness by proactively exercising fiscal disciplines and performance/evidence-based budget allocation. Number 2, boost Tarrant County's operational efficiency and productivity through streamlined policy and processes, enhanced communication, and targeted application of technologies. Number 3, continue to cultivate an organizational culture in which people are nurtured, innovation is encouraged, excellence is rewarded. Those are the internal goals. The external goals, number 1, enhance the quality of life for the residents and businesses of Tarrant County through effective delivery and equitable administration of justice, public safety, health care, transportation, human and other services. External goal number 2, strategically engage the public and private stakeholders to improve the mobility of people and goods in Tarrant County and the North Texas region. External goal number 3, proactively collaborate with Tarrant County cities and other stakeholders to grow and diversify the local economy through the enhancement of human and capital infrastructure. So that was my homework, and feel free to dissect it in any way you want to.
So we're finished.
I'd give it at least an A-.
Sounded very good. Can you email that to them so that we might be able to see that in something, so that we could see it versus just hear it?
Yes, sir.
steelj@advisory.com. Steel with an E on the end.
Very good, Commissioner.
Looks like you got that backup problem fixed last night, too.
No.
We just hadn't seen it
You
pop
haven't seen
up
it yet, Judge.
Say that again. Your email.
steelej@advisory.com.
want me to copy and paste it onto the body of the email, or you want to do an attachment?
Is it a Word document?
Attachment's fine. Either one, actually, just so we can show it up on the screen.
Send it your way.
Okay.
You just sent it to him.
Yes, sir.
Could it be sent to someone that could print it off and give us all copies of that?
We will in just,
Send it to my office after you get it.
You want me to get it to Catherine?
Yeah, do you want to send it to judge's office? That'd be great.
Okay.
send it down to ours also.
I'll send it to your email, GK?
There it is right there.
There you go. Need it a little bigger, I can do that. Experience in error having trouble opening the Word document.
Well, isn't that it?
There it is. Everybody see that okay? A little bigger? That okay? It is good, isn't it?
Just the one question that I would have about those is that the detail below each one of those, if we're not careful, they'll be such that these 6 goals will become 18 goals, or and I mean, which I think is probably the issue with any of these things is if we take these, then now we've got to define those baselines that we're going to look at.
We're missing.
That's when we're going to get into it.
Well, you're certainly right that with any set of goals, we're going to have the goals themselves, then under the goals, we're going to have objectives, which will be many, and under the objectives, you'll have initiatives, which will be many, 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 many more. But that's just how it works.
There you go. So the one I guess I'd ask you, how about improve the county's brand? Is that in there somewhere?
A brand is technically a culture.
A what?
A culture.
Culture.
An organizational culture.
So you think it's number 3?
If that culture is authentic and consistent, it ultimately will lead to a brand.
And then number 6 on here is justice, and that is in number 1, external. I was trying to do the crossover. So these are the 6 that you have in front of you. Number 3 is still combined human and capital. And then,
The mobility is sectioned out, as you can see.
pardon me?
Transportation piece is sectioned out in number 2. External.
Right, here's the transportation, you're number 2 external, and here's the human services, you're number 1 external, right? Quality of life, right? And so our number 2 here, employee well-being, is your number 3 internal, culture, as is number 4, 3 internal, because that's culture, right? Our number 1 financial includes your number 1, which is financial, but also your number 3, which is economic development. So it looks like the crossover is thorough. I mean, you didn't miss anything. We didn't seem to miss anything, right? So back to your point, Judge Whitley, is if these are the goals, we just need to make sure that the objectives that come from these aren't so many that we just can't work on them all, right?
But at the same time, we need to, I guess, what we would say to each group, either identify how you're going to, each department, each section, each individual, how you're going to, what your part's going to be in accomplishing each one of these 6 goals, if you have a part in those. Some you may not have.
Some you may not.
Some you may.
And I think a lot of that comes down to metrics, right? So if you have a metric that you can align to, let's say we have a evidence-based budget allocation, then what's my part of it? Everybody will have a part of that, right? So what is it? Well, it's what results in your budget, I assume, and how you spend it, but...
I guess the one, and I'm assuming that within, as far as the employee well-being, Andy, are you believing that to be an item 3 internal?
Yes, sir.
So this is
people or
employee and brand, right?
Innovation is encouraged and excellence is rewarded.
So I think it was Lou yesterday said we should try to get these as high level as we can, right? So that we can encourage cross-organizational collaboration and things like that. I think that was that you, Lou, that said that? Yeah, so these seem to, I mean, this one certainly is a higher level than what ours was.
And quite frankly, I think you've got enough categories here now that whenever you move away from the goal issue into the objective issue, Judge, you can capture what you're talking about as far as employee health, the benefits, things like that as part of the goal structure, I mean the objective structure rather than the goal structure. Some of that can actually move over into some of the initiatives that we'd be doing.
I think if we, under each goal, if we identify several objectives, and we make sure that those objectives, because objectives have to be smart, they have to be specific, measurable,
Right.
achievable, realistic, and it has to have a timeline to it. So if we set objectives that can be accomplished within, let's say, 5 years, and then under each objective, we create initiatives that can be accomplished on an annual basis, okay? And that will give us a pretty good timeline and framework to implement and execute the strategic plan.
Right.
I still think, though, that we, in each one of those or in each one of these objectives, we have to, if we can't determine where we are now, then I think it's difficult to set objectives on where we're gonna be. To see if we've made improvement or to give us some sort of a milepost.
I think you're right, because in order to determine where we want to go, we have to know where we are.
Right.
I mean, that's basic navigation.
And where you are is a metric, right? A metric that is defined by some words up here that makes us determine what that metric is.
And you have to determine the current situation where we are right now. Let's talk in terms of financial strength, maybe cash reserve. Is that part of the factor, part of the measuring metric?
Mhm.
Is that part of the what we mean by financial strength?
Right.
So are we there yet? Okay, maybe we're at $30 million in cash reserve.
And we want to be something higher.
Possibly. That's what the judge is talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I don't think there's any disagreement in the room. The best way to get goals and objectives to be understandable is to find a metric that defines them well, right? So when you say financial strength, if you tell me it's cash reserves and you want to go from X to Y, what is it that I can do to help you with the cash reserves, right? Or maybe nothing. Maybe at the department level, in many cases I can't. Except underspend my budget, maybe.
But up there, not just strength, it's also about effectiveness, too.
Yeah, I think
So that way we don't just throw money at problems.
I think there's more than one metric probably in every one of these, right? And the way,
Trying to get to a higher level look-see here, but some place in here, should we not inject improved employee retention? That is a big deal to us. That is something we can measure now.
Right, and that will be under the objective. Yes, sir. That will be under
3,
3. An objective under 3.
along with things like all those other things that we talked about here, training and compensation benefits and so
All
forth.
that would contribute to employee retention, but
But you definitely would have one, I would think, on retention as well, right? And retention can be measured, right? Turnover.
Certainly.
Turnover.
If we had 30% retention, 50% retention,
So the way we'd go about talking about metrics on this would be looking at the words in each of the goals and say, based on the words, what's a good metric to define that? At some point, and maybe we do that next, we need to, if these are amenable to everybody, then we need to go with each one to give us an idea of how we're going to measure these. So at some point, we'd have goals, we'd have metrics for these that would also, be, in some cases, be metrics of the objectives. And as you said, Andy, we'd have objectives and initiatives.
so why don't we talk about, go through each of the goals,
Mm-hmm.
and then define maybe 3 to 4 objectives per goal that we want to accomplish within the next 5 years. I mean, we can name 10 objectives, but for the sake of being successful, we probably want to narrow and prioritize those objectives and narrow it down from 10 to 4 in the next 5 years. And then within each initiative, with each objective, we outline 3 or 4 initiatives that we can accomplish on an annual basis.
So if we have 6 goals, 4 objectives each, that's 24, and then we have a bunch of initiatives under that, that's probably too much to work on. So we'll have to say which ones are we going to work on in year 1, right?
We have to prioritize,
Yeah,
of course. I mean,
Right, timing. Any,
Okay, so let me ask you all a question. You see these 6 here, 3 internal, 3 external. Are you all fairly satisfied that these are the goals that we want to start creating the objectives for? Let's start moving forward.
Just a thought. I mean, I understand the external and the internal, but do we even need to have that up there?
The internal and external?
Yeah, those words.
I mean,
No,
just,
no, and I think what Commissioner Wynn did, he just,
Yeah.
you know, we call it facing inward or facing outward. That's, so we can remove those. The deal is those 6, you know, I'm not even gonna say 3 and 3, but those 6 are those. Are we getting close to what you all think the goals should be, regardless if they face in or out? We'll take in and out, or external
I
and
think
internal.
that's a good starting point. We can compare that to what we've been talking about yesterday and
Okay.
see how they fit together.
Okay, so why don't we do this then? If we can
Come up
start,
with the objective.
yeah, we can start dissecting each one of these and create the objectives, a listing of those objectives, and then once we agree to the objectives, we can then go ahead and move into the initiative piece.
Good. So are you comfortable that, something you said, Gary, are you comfortable that these 6 generally are consistent with the ones we came up with yesterday? That's what I was trying to show here was the crossover. I think they do have a pretty good crossover. I don't think you missed anything or we missed anything. I think they're consistent, but you actually have more. You have more in yours, Commissioner Wynn, that we could then pull out as objectives, right?
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and start working on the objectives for each of these 6?
Okay. Number 1, improve Tarrant County's financial strength and effectiveness by proactively exercising fiscal disciplines and performance/evidence-based budget allocation.
I mean, on our list that you did, or we did yesterday, it's economic development, maintaining sufficient reserve.
We did, Gary, but economic development is
Right.
down here, right?
Yeah.
So other than, well, first of all,
So let me give you one goal, okay? Why don't we?
you mean one objective?
One objective, yes. So maintain the current financial reserves as established by the Commissioners Court. Because the court members have gone through that process now, and we've agreed to that policy. So I think one of the things you want us to do is to maintain that policy.
Maintain the financial reserves
Yes.
consistent with the policy.
Yeah.
And is a number attached to that, GK, with respect to a target, where we are versus where we need to be?
10% with carve-outs.
Okay.
Are we
And are we there? I'm sorry. We are.
We're already there.
Maintain.
Maintain it. Oh,
I'm
so
just
don't-
putting things up there so that y'all can start.
Don't
picking
divert it.
apart.
Okay.
So maintain is the right word, since we are just trying to keep. Now, at some point, might the Commissioners Court say we want that to be higher?
So what they do is they don't change the objective, they just change the
The
policy.
target and the policy, right? Because the policy has a target in it.
Absolutely.
Is this the main financial measure that the Commissioners Court looks at? If not, is there another one we need?
There are others,
Okay.
and I think in deference to the judge, we probably ought to put up there, develop a cash-on-hand policy.
Cash reserve.
Cash, no, but that's the same.
Develop a cash on hand policy?
What would you call it, Renee?
I would probably call it cash reserve. But it's more than that. From
It is more
remembering
than
the
that.
judge, it was the use of those reserves, the strategy. So it's really a strategic plan on how you're going to use your excess cash.
That's right.
Right.
Policy.
Right.
Policy related to how you're going to use those dollars. Again, historically, you funded capital with them, so is that part of what you're going to continue to do with your excess cash, is continue to fund capital? I mean, that would be part of that policy.
So we need to establish a policy to create and maintain a level of reserves, a healthy level of reserve,
We've already got a policy to create and
and maintain.
maintain a,
For me, it's
this is how
you're
you're
going
gonna
How we
use
use
it.
it, okay?
Yeah.
Under what circumstances
That's what the
can we
judge
use
has
the
been
cash reserve?
pushing for,
You know, a tornado hit?
study of our
or,
cash on hand and what we're gonna do
We're talking
with
about
it.
cash, not reserves.
I'm
Cash
ta-
above reserves.
Cash.
Right.
Oh,
You
okay.
have extra cash, but it's actually not the financial reserves in the
No.
I
And
see.
like Renee said, currently that's primarily what we use to fund capital. What we use to fund capital, so we don't sell debt.
So does that develop a policy on how to use the cash on hand?
where we started.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No.
Debbie, did you say something? Or did you just go? Oh, I see, okay. Are there any objectives around what you've put together for
What we,
this one that has to be addressed in number 1?
somehow we need to be able to collect evidence, performance evidence, from the various departments within Tarrant County to be able to allocate budget based on the performance. If we don't have the evidence, it will be tough to do that.
So develop a methodology to collect evidence from the departments?
Methodology, yeah, maybe.
Or do you just usually call that a policy?
Policy and a method. To consistently collect data, performance data.
From departments, and do you want to go on to say for budget purposes? You do.
Not only for budget, but perhaps for
Improvement?
improvement, for rewarding, for encouragement purposes, and so forth as well.
So, Andy, was that in response, what you just said, was that in response to my question about this?
I think so.
Okay, but also it's also response to that, right?
Right.
Performance evidence-based, okay.
All right, we've talked about reserves, we've talked about cash on hand. We have not addressed debt.
Okay.
Debt, that's a good.
Debt, yes.
What is the current situation of debt in the county?
It's low
You want to keep it
compared
that
to
way?
other counties,
Right.
other urban counties.
And do you have a policy on that, like with a target on it?
I don't think so.
Maybe you want to develop one?
We need to develop a debt management policy.
Okay.
Jerry, what do you think? I think probably. This is the conversation we need to judge because he's a mean cow.
Right, and we're probably going to have to start this all over again when he comes back in the room.
You don't want me to just turn the page and go on to the next one? Yes, sir.
I think one other objective there, again, assuming that everybody understands what performance and evidence-based budgeting is, one thing that we may add there is if this is a complete, if this goal is going to be a paradigm shift for the county, if this is not the way the county has budgeted in the past, then we should add training in that system, because that will be critical. That should actually be an objective early on in the, so that we are positioned to be able to, department heads, a lot of people that put together the budget, they'll need to take training on performance and evidence-based budgeting.
Move those. Okay, super, thank you.
I would add in there that we need to develop a system, Jack. Develop a system
And
to produce the performance and evidence-based budget allocation, and then to provide the training for the Tarrant County employees.
so develop a system.
Yeah, so I think that
And-
objective 5 can be lumped together with objective 3.
What happened to objective 3? Okay. Develop a methodology to consistently collect performance data from departments. for budget improvement. Okay, so we'll make this, we'll add this on to 3. So develop a system and provide training for evidence-based budgeting. So this becomes part of 3. So Judge,
There you go.
We'll bring you up to speed.
And looking at the
Thank you.
financial, we've got the policy already on financial reserves. We've talked about that.
And we're meeting goals. So the baseline says we're in good shape. We're at 10%
Right.
minus.
The next one, you say policy on how to use the cash. Shouldn't that be excess cash on hand?
We were trying to craft something for you, so. Excess.
Actually, this was done with you in mind. Yes. So right. Okay. Number 3. Number 3. Remember, is develop a methodology for evidence-based budgeting, for training for it, but also to collect performance from the departments to be used for budgeting, improvement, rewards, and so forth. And part of that, Judge, was, maybe a big part of that was brought about by what we have to do to meet some of these goals. Number 4, develop a debt management policy, and that's where we got. Commissioner Brooks pointed out we have the reserves, we have the cash, but we didn't have anything on debt. In fact, apparently you don't have a policy, so we need a policy with a target in it, right?
Well, and debt could refer to not only issued debt, but it could also refer to unfunded liabilities.
Do you want to break it out that way?
I mean, debt is debt, but that's certainly a liability that is beyond a 1-year type of a deal.
Are you talking about like retirement?
I'll let Gaz be present.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'll stay with you that we don't have that liability, even though we're going to have to put it on the financial statement. But the unfunded pension liability, we are contractually obligated to, and I think that should be a
We need to add debt, to manage debt and unfunded liability.
unfunded retirement. I'd say I would want to make it very specific as to the unfunded retirement
Liability.
liability.
Why don't you make it a separate objective?
I don't have a problem with that.
You want to make that a separate objective?
Yeah.
Jack?
Yes, sir.
Because it's not debt in the traditional sense of debt.
No.
It's something very specific.
So what did it say? Develop a
A policy
A
to manage.
plan to address our unfunded pension liability.
And we've moved in that direction, I think, fairly significantly over the last couple of years. GK and his group and folks from TCDRS have, let us understand or better understand the impact of some of the decisions we make on that unfunded liability. And as a result, we've kind of set a policy that if we were going to do something that was going to increase that we would pay for it either up front, or that we would pay for it up front, or we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I think we're there, but I think we need to maintain.
Maybe plan is not the right word. Maybe strategy is better.
now. Is your well, never mind. That's a detailed.
The other thing, and I think we'll get more into it as we get into the, what happened? We moved. And I guess this is where we'll get into initiatives or goals within departments. Some departments generate revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Some departments
Cost centers,
are cost centers,
but contribute to.
but at the same time can control those costs, or by doing certain things may actually reduce the overall costs.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are things that, can still happen, but that's where we're going to really have to get down. And I guess one of the questions I need to try to understand is, how do we engage the departments or other individuals to actually come forward with their part of the deal, instead of us trying to determine what we do for domestic relations to do that? How are we going to?
Yeah, how do you get the departments to proactively come to you with strategies as opposed to you just dictating to them when maybe you don't know the best right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to find a way for us not to be sitting up here trying to dictate to them where we're going.
So if they align to your strategy, which is working on some of these objectives or initiatives as needed, maybe they don't apply to all of them, and if they also identify their own weak spots to work on, they should be able to tell you why the budget is justified. So it's back to this. It's back to this one, I think. They've got the departments have to determine how they align and how they measure that alignment, and determine also what they do on a daily basis and where their weak spots are based on their baselines, and that should help determine where they need monies. So if they're not serving their customers well because they need training dollars to streamline their processes or something like that, that's how.
And I guess as we're going through this, and they're sitting back here watching and listening, and I would like to encourage them to participate and say, wait a minute, we really don't think this is doable. Because we can sit here and easily say we want it, but if in their minds, I at least need to hear that if they've got concerns about the
objectives or anything.
Objectives or about the ability to implement what they see up there. So each one of them should be thinking within their department, what could I do? What can I do? This isn't going to. And I understand that there's, in certain ones, they're not going to be a part of it, but
right.
The vast majority of them, if we're going to put goals up here that the majority of the departments aren't going to be a part of, then we're not doing what we need to be doing.
Why do those goals? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So maybe of all these objectives in goal number one, the key question for them, for the departments, would be the ability to use data, staffing data, productivity data, customer data, to actually justify expenditures. Right? And so I think when I talk to many of you, you do that to some degree. So as we build more thorough scorecards, we'll make sure that data is in there so you can use it for those purposes, right?
Well, based on the governing for result policy, on an annual basis, the departments within Tarrant County are charged with the task of building a business plan.
That's right.
And then identifying initiatives within the department.
Right.
And align their initiatives to accomplish the objectives, thus collectively leading to the achievement of the goal.
Right. It's two things. It's like first and foremost, the way I see it is, if they can align to any of these, they need to. That's first and foremost. Then if there's any bandwidth left over and they have weak spots that for some reason don't align to these, they need to probably work on those too. Those could be process improvements and so forth. But you're right. I was just looking at it. A business plan is required for every department every year. And that business plan in Miami-Dade had a scorecard included with it to track performance.
But is there some thought that the county departments don't do that now?
I don't think there's any indictment like that. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Others do as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Tom. When I talked to you, I heard data.
Well, you do it in certain areas. If one of our goals is, and I keep going back to this because this is the one that I do believe could have a bigger impact on our deal, the whole well-being. So one of the goals would be to make sure that every employee in your department either has a health assessment or a physical every year.
Again, what makes you think we don't have somebody that's dedicated to that chore? I do.
I think I think the issue with what the court is saying here is that we want to formalize that, bring it into a reportable document that we give to the Commissioner's Court on an annual basis. That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
If we missed something up here, that ought to be.
I don't think anybody's saying that we're not doing some of these things. It's just a matter of collecting and bringing them forward.
And my thought would, and I guess my response, Tom, would be, everybody may be going out and getting a physical, but we've only got about a quarter or less than a quarter of our employees who go through the health assessment. So that means that 75% of our employees are then meeting this goal by getting an annual physical.
So
I'm not sure that happens.
So how do we ascertain if they're really getting getting a physical?
Because,
How do you? You said all of yours did.
Yeah, how do you know?
yeah, how do you do it?
I say, that's what I'm asking. We don't
Well, no,
have
you
the
said you
revenue
had somebody that was doing it right now.
Tracy works on the wellness thing and the things that we can quantify, but we don't have any idea when they get a physical.
United Healthcare can tell us that. At least forever.
They'll tell me. But,
Yeah, I don't think this is about, there's no accusation going on here. I think it's a matter of how do we know? And Tom, to your point, how do we define it, right? A lot of the metrics you look at, you go, well, wait a minute, how do we define that? That's a great discussion because that starts to get you deciding, so everybody's measuring everything the same way. So I don't think anybody's blaming anybody. It's just a
No,
question.
but
how do
there
we know?
are things that we can do because we can't, there are companies now that you have, here's your premium, and your premium is lowered or raised based upon what you do or do not do. And so failure, we may not know anything more than this person failed to meet the metrics that you set up, therefore here's what their premium is.
So they go to health assessment and they come back to the bad bill of health and they don't do anything about it.
Well, for one part, it depends upon what criteria we set. Some, again, say, we've got 5 things that we're focused on right now. There's a medical metrics out there, and it's either 5 or 6, and it may deal with blood pressure, with cholesterol, and they've got the 5 or 6 things. And so here's your baseline. Again, you establish a baseline.
Thanks.
You either improve on that baseline or you stay within the accepted norms, or there's a consequence to that. Well, when it comes to that and us paying for the health care, we're no different than the private sector. We're looking for pass-fail, and the insurance company can tell us the pass-fail without giving us individual metrics about your particular health. They can say, he's not managing his cholesterol.
But then, again, if all we get is the gross statistics, how do we focus on the individuals that are not doing what they're supposed to do?
I think we can call upon the people who are experts in that area to help us with that. But the way for example, I was talking with Robin the other day. A particular county, Lubbock County, in fact, was having, their ISD was having a problem with their employees overutilizing the emergency room. So in the next year's plan, they put up a copay of $500 if you went to the emergency room. Amazingly, their use of the emergency room went down.
Again, we deal with this in quarterly meetings. If you'll give me a list of things you want us to focus on.
Well, that's what we've got to develop, I think, as we look and go forward, is we've got to look at folks that can help us and help us begin. I think the HSAs this year are, again, an effort to begin to ask folks to be a little bit more responsible about the choices they're making, and give them a benefit for being more responsible in those choices. We don't have specifics yet, but I think that's what I hope, that as a result of us beginning to get into this and defining this, is that we really get down to those specifics in each one of the different categories and in each one of the different departments. In the HR area, maybe these things will be every department, every employee within the county, or within the county plan, because we do have a number of folks who opt out. And so they obviously would not be a part or impacted by that. Well, no, I mean, they should be, and that may come into the overall of us.
Well, you don't give them incentives to make sure they have it. It's getting benefits from our plan.
I understand, but they're really not getting benefits from our plan because they're not a part of it. If our goal is to affect the overall medical costs of our medical costs that we're paying for as a county, then the folks who are in our plans are the ones that has to be focused to. the opt-outs they're required to have insurance. So, our hope would be that whoever they have that insurance through is got the same concerns and are doing things which will encourage those employees in that particular program to participate or to be more responsible and or hopefully think more healthy as they move forward. But now we're getting into the weeds. But I mean, I think as department heads, as employees, those are the things that I think we have to begin thinking about, and that's why this is, we're going to kind of, by setting these goals and maybe the objectives under these goals, that's where it's really going to then be passed back to y'all to figure out how we're going to implement those objectives within your department, either as a department totally going forward as it may pertain to some of the services you provide, or how you do it to your individuals within your department if it deals with something. And again, the example that I used was the wellness program or the health care.
So shouldn't we develop another objective then to manage the explosive cost of health insurance?
I would assume, I mean, and this is where I'm confused. I'm not clear on this either, but I'm just saying that there's going to be I think this is where everything really does blow up, and we have to be careful not to overwhelm our folks. But in my mind, that's, as HR comes forward with their goals or their initiatives to match these goals, their initiatives may include, here's what, we're going to ask each department to do, or that's kind of the breakdown I don't have right now. I don't clearly understand how we're going to make each individual or department, or if it's going to be HR coming out, or, how all that's going to happen.
So usually you could look at,
You're fixing to get a dividend. No, that's.
yeah, since I've turned on my email to get something from Andy now, it's all coming in. So, one thing we can do when we're done with this is we could look at each objective. You could put all the objectives across the top, all the departments down, and see who aligns to what. And then they would have more granular ones. So I guess I don't know the answer whether that really needs to be at this level or not, Andy, but it definitely needs to be in there, and it's HR, I guess, that does that looks to try to control, looks for strategies to try to control health costs. The question is, would it fit under one of these? Would it fit like under C or someplace, excuse me, objective 3 or someplace like that? Is there an objective up here that would fit under?
I mean, it's a liability, so it may not be an unfunded liability, but it is a liability.
Right.
So maybe we need to develop a strategy to address our unfunded pension and other liabilities.
But isn't that what you do in objective 3?
You mean goal 3?
In
I see everything in 1 as pertaining to the financial.
Right.
I see everything in 3. I see the 3 possibly being where we would get more back into the employee well-being. One section of it may be in their health. One section of it may be financially. Whatever. One may be training. But I see that under goal 3, not objective 3.
Right. I'm sorry. My question would be if you wanted a place to tuck, hey, find a cheaper way to do health care, which you have to do year after year, but now it's getting even bigger. Would it fit here, or would it fit here?
It would fit under 3.
Because we're not trying to find a
goal 3.
We're not trying to find a cheaper way to do health care. We're trying to do something that will
be effective,
move our employees to being in a healthier state, which ultimately should end up affecting the financial part of it. But overall, what we're looking for is healthier employees.
Then it goes here, right?
That's the interrelationship between the goals. They complement and support one another.
Right. But generally, I mean, if you're going to put one in there, if, let's say,
That would go under 3.
if Tina's going to put one in there, Robin is going to go here. Okay, good. So, so the discussion you just had is a great discussion. It's how are we going to do this? Well, it's first, we already measure stuff. And, anytime I've worked with somebody, they do already measure stuff. But not all the time does everybody at the right level have all the visibility to that. So this is about alignment and visibility, right? So how do we get visibility to those things? And then I heard frustration from the group around things like But how do we get people to do this and stay HIPAA compliant and make sure that they actually do it? How do we know? Those are great discussions, but we don't need to have all those today, right? I mean, those are things you have to do, and sometimes the commissioners can help, and sometimes GK can help. I think it leads to a much better visibility for everybody, but I was just kind of letting you go on it because you're going to hear more of that. You know, we'll have to work out those details as we go.
I think in the past,
You know, give me a strategy to break these people smoking. Don't have one now. I mean, they sneak off to go smoke a cigarette. You see them standing out here on the sidewalk. They got their little places that they go smoke cigarettes in the garages. How do we stop that?
I mean, you can offer smoking cessation courses, but what makes them go?
We've
right?
talked about, as a court, we talked about this a couple of years ago in our budget, and we talked, at that point, we discussed the possibility of whether it be a carrot or a stick philosophy on just the smoking. And I think what we heard from the court at that point in time was, let's not just single out one particular thing that we're going to work on. Let's look at everything that we may. Let's look at, are you working on high blood pressure? Let's look at what are you doing about other.
So just wellness in general.
And wellness in general. And so since then, I think there are certain that our healthcare provider who administers our plan would tell you that there are certain objectives that are being viewed as this is a way to do that. And then we just need to look at it and determine whether or not that's something we're willing to adapt our plan to or not.
Right.
And it was back, Tom answered the question about the HSAs yesterday and whether that was going to be kind of the cuts or as we were moving toward that Cadillac tax. And as we said, no, it's not. So that means we've got about 4 years to either try to begin moving people into a more, to be more aware and to be, to try to be healthier, or we've got some way or another to balance out a $5 million hickey we're going to take with the federal government, and as Commissioner Wynn said, then that's going to move it back up into goal number 1 because now we're talking about financial.
I say if we expand unfunded pension liability, we include other liability or something like that. That way we can deal with healthcare liability as well.
No, but wait a minute. Hold on. My problem with that is when you start talking about the unfunded pension liability and you go beyond that and saying other benefits, I do not believe we have an unfunded liability as it pertains to health care. Because as a court, we can make the decision on any given day to stop any subsidy. We can't stop offering the benefits to our retirees, whether they be eligible for Medicare or not. But most counties do not subsidize that in any way, shape, or form. And that's the liability we talk about as we go forward on that deal. I've been staunchly opposed to having to put that on a financial statement and to recognize it. And so I don't want to put it up here and say that we got it.
I'm not referring to healthcare or healthcare benefit is a unfunded liability, but it is a liability. It's not unfunded, but it is a liability if we don't manage correctly. It may, like for example, the Cadillac tax of the ACA. That is a potential liability that we're going to have to come up with a strategy to manage.
So, Andy, you're saying not unfunded liabilities, but and other liabilities.
And if we want to move on and we want to put it under 1, then why don't we just create objective number 6?
I agree.
And then in the objective number 6 is going to be develop a strategy
to address the future Cadillac tax under the ACA.
You could either say that or you say the ever-increasing cost of health insurance. However you want to do it.
And Judge, we talk about achieving these objectives within a period of about 5 years. So we want to make sure we set objectives that are achievable within 5 years. And then the initiatives, the multiple initiatives can be executed and accomplished on an annual basis.
Ready to move on to goal number 2? Now, the thing I notice about this is, except for number 3, these are, well, no, they almost look like initiatives. Numbers, number 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 almost look like initiatives, whereas number 3 is probably multiple initiatives, right? So it may be, like, for example, when we get to the talking about initiatives, develop a policy on how to use excess cash on hand, the question would be, who would develop it? When does it need to be developed by? And it really sounds like that is an initiative. So that's just an observation. I just wonder if we're getting too granular on the objectives, that's all.
In number 2, are in the objectives or in the goals?
I just wonder if some of these are too granular. Again, we can address that later as we go. I think we've covered the waterfront here. This one here sounds like a goal that really requires several initiatives and a lot of execution to it. And the other ones seem to be, not quite as large. So I guess the caveat is let's just make sure we don't establish so many objectives that they all look like initiatives too.
Well, and eventually we may move some of those objectives over to the initiative column.
We may. Yeah, I would just, okay. So let's go to number 2 and see how that goes. Yes, sir, Chris. We need to speak.
I was wondering whether, because again, we're dealing with performance-based budgeting here, whether upfront it would be important for Commissioner Scott to establish some type of policy as well to guide how we would fund those things that government does that are not measurable. They're done because of government principles.
Is that part of the system, or do you want the
I
word?
don't know that. I thought of the system as being more of it could be, but I
don't know.
I thought of a system more of the methodology and the technology to capture data. So
what do you think? Do we need the word policy in there somewhere? Are you okay with
I think he makes a good point, because there are several things that we do because we're mandated to do them.
Right.
And we'll have to keep doing them no matter what the metrics say.
We can say develop a system and provide training for evidence-based budgeting where possible.
And I think that where possible is something that may be used later. I mean, even like in number 2, instead of saying boost Tarrant County, maybe it's maximized, because maybe some of the departments or some of them, they are, again, it goes back to how do you measure, to make the assumption that you can always be better may not be correct.
So do you want to change boost to maximize?
Sure.
Maximize? That's like corn.
He's thinking of corn.
I was thinking of corn, yeah. The price of corn is downside. Department. So objectives for 2. You've got potential measurement of productivity. You've got potential, streamlining processes. You've got communication. And you've got technology. I mean, that's what the goal breaks down into.
I think you're right. Some of the objective may be a little bit too
Granular. But we can go back and see that.
We can
I think
consolidate and make it a little bit more.
higher level, and then the initiatives can fit under that. But the good thing about this number 1 goal is it is very understandable and it's financial, right? And that's a good place to start,
Measurable, right.
right? And so we can be granular. Now we get to this one here, and I think we'll go back and look.
Well, and again, I think in order to figure out whether there's improvements that need to be made, we've got to understand where we are, and we've got to agree upon what we're comparing ourselves to.
Right.
And until we make those determinations, it's going to be difficult to evaluate whether we can be more efficient, or we can, efficient or productive.
So is it one of the objectives establish productivity goals for the county or productivity measurements for the county?
Or just to
That would
understand
be under
where we
number
are.
two.
Yeah, under number 2, yeah, I'm sorry.
Under number 2.
But we can't, I don't think we can do the goals until we understand where we are and how we compare with other entities that are doing the same things that we're doing.
Right. So that was my point. Do we want to just say, well, we need to establish those productivity metrics across the county so we can find out how we're doing, compare, benchmark against somebody else, and decide if we need to improve or not? Now, the implication there is, do you have productivity measurement, like technology or anything going on? There's one out there called the MOS, Management Operating System. Do you use anything like that to track?
We don't see it if it is.
Okay.
As a core. I'm not, and we talk about a lot of the metrics during our budget time, but we commonly hear as well, we can't get that, the other counties won't give us that information, or, there's always things that we don't get, but I think we need to do a better job of forcing it, getting it.
I did hear some. I heard some from Tom, as a matter of fact, compared to the other 4 big counties, right? So there are ways to do that without buying a technology.
That's correct. We had to quit doing cost per report because we couldn't get them to give us the information. We do a staff report, but it's like, especially when we make them look bad, it becomes much more difficult to get the information from them.
From them being other courts or other counties or what?
From the district clerks.
So what that ultimately says is that if we can't get them to voluntarily give it, then we get it through public information requests.
Again, we don't frankly have time to do that. He pulls it off the websites of several of the counties. Harris County's got to where good luck.
So do we want one that says establish productivity measures or metrics across the county? Is that how we start to address what is our baseline?
That's right.
I think we have to.
That's where we have to begin.
What you may be talking about too is the ratios that the Office of Court Administration used. We discussed that one.
We did.
And that one's a good one to look at, backlog index and clearance rate.
Right, those were the ones. And you have to make sure it's apples and apples. That's part of the problem. So I realize this is not an easy objective to achieve. I get that. But
It takes
it's tough.
a while.
Yeah.
And technology is going to be needed to do that.
So then the next one comes into streamline policy and processes. Some of the processes we have are in good shape. Some of them specifically, I heard from Mary Lou. She just saying, all right. She's working on her. So the question is, do we want to have something around streamlining processes? Streamlining could be using lean or something like that,
Yeah, how about establishing a policy or strategy to identify and eliminate redundancy and waste through some sort of an application of a lean methodology, something like that. I'm thinking out loud.
Establish and deploy?
Establish a strategy. Establish and deploy a strategy, right? To identify and eliminate redundancy and waste through the
Lean principles,
lean
something like that, yeah. Establish and deploy a strategy to identify and eliminate redundancies and waste using lean principles. That's good. Communication?
That,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that sounds wonderful, and it may be wonderful, but for those of us who don't know what lean principles are, and I would probably guess that most of the people in this room don't have any familiarity with the lean principles.
How about improvement methodologies? Instead of lean principles, using improvement methodologies.
Okay.
Which means you could flowchart a process, look for the bottlenecks, get rid of them, and never actually use lean, right? Is that better? I mean, if not, give me an alternative. I'd be glad to put it up. Okay, good point. It's just like the word Six Sigma. When you use that around people, their eyes gloss over because they don't know what it means. So.
Try to sit through a 2-hour session of that.
Of what, Six Sigma? Have you done that, Tom? Oh.
Gary was there too. Do you even remember Gary?
You know, Commissioner Johnson, that's what we used in lowering our
You
jail
should.
population.
You should.
Remember? No, I mean, we used that when we lowered our jail population when we were overcrowded.
Use lean?
Yeah.
Sure did. And that was back in 88, 89.
Lean is just application of industrial engineering principles. Yeah, look at the process and look for the waste. But no need to make it more difficult than it is, right? Just call it improvement methodologies. Right? How about communication? We heard this one. Now, this is one that all departments could latch on to, but also probably HR would have something to do here as we deploy it. Is this something like improve the communication?
Maybe enhance, come up with create or establish a method or a way or a system to communicate policy and initiatives throughout the county, within something like that. And somehow, GK, the codification of the policy can be included under here.
Yeah, and that'll
As an initiative.
be one of the initiatives that we're going to, because that's already funded, and we're going to move forward with that. Plus, one of the other initiatives on this one is probably going to be what we're doing with our e-government committee. And, we talk about communicating internally, but it's communicating both internally and externally.
So when you said the codification of it, talking about the documentation of the policies and
What it means is that we're going through all the policies and orders of the Commissioner's Court, and we're going to put that in a format so that it's easily found and brought up to date.
yeah, okay, I see how it fits in there. I was thinking maybe it fit in here. Hopefully, as you do those, you'll make sure that they're pretty efficient, right? They're pretty streamlined, right? Targeted application of technologies.
I think this is going to be one of the things, we keep talking about technology, and we keep talking about, and I'm sure every department feels like they've got technology, yeah.
That one,
word,
yeah.
that they need in order to be able to achieve and to meet some of these goals that we're putting up here.
Right.
But financially, it can't all occur at the same time. And so whether it be the IT steering committee or whomever it is that prioritizes and determines that in effect, then we have to say, King's X, we're not going to evaluate this department on that particular goal because we have just delayed their ability to get technology.
Right. And that's the fair way to do it. You're right. So objective number 4, something around technology, use technology as an enabler to promote efficiency or something like that.
Something like that. We can. Somehow we have to make all the technology work together as well, because the best way to achieve efficiency through technology is to make sure the technologies work together to produce that desired result.
So use well integrated technology.
That's right. Yeah, not just, you have some legacy technology and you have some modern technology. The two cannot integrate, and it won't be able to produce the result that you need.
There you go, Chris. You can head off and start on that one right now if you like.
Is that a good objective?
When I said well integrated, he shook his head yes. So I was looking at him really to see if does that make sense. Yeah. In some cases, you won't be able to do that because of the legacy systems, but that's your goal. You said it yesterday, right?
Essentially, we will modernize our technology.
Right.
As action plans, we can develop a lot of things on that.
And we're going to come across. I'm sorry. Excuse me. We're going to come across technology again. We just need to make sure that it might be the same objective. I don't know. We'll see when we get to it. When we look at it for healthcare, maybe.
Technology is always going to be just simply a tool that we're going to use to improve our processes.
Right.
It's not a goal unto itself. It's a tool that we use.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we. Sorry.
The better the tool,
The better
better
we
the
do.
results
You bet.
that we're going to get from using that tool. So I'd like to see an objective 5 that says, to the extent feasible, continue to be a leader in the development of technology.
In the development and application.
In the development and application of technology in the county context. Does that do it for you, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Would you modify that in some way?
I think it's good. We will modernize, we will develop, we will modernize, we will allow to be strive to be a leader.
That first clause recognizes the cost.
The money, right?
Yes.
That's the money.
To the extent feasible.
That's a good one. That's a good one because of the things you've done already to develop systems, right?
Like all partnership with the CUC.
Right. On the other hand, you won't want to develop everything, and that's where this comes in, right? I mean, whether you develop it and apply it or just go decide to buy it, that makes sense, right? That's a good one. Okay. Do you?
Let's move on to number 3, or lunch.
I was going to say, well, no, it's not lunch yet, Andy, but it'll be breakfast.
We kind of spoiled him yesterday.
In
We
2
got
hours,
him
we'll have
early lunch,
breakfast.
So he's kind of gotten used to that.
Do we need a break, or are we okay?
I'd say break as people need to break, and
Okay.
we keep going.
All right. So number 3, continue to cultivate. Here's the employee one, right? No, I'm good, thanks. Continue to cultivate an organizational culture in which people are nurtured, innovation is encouraged, excellence is rewarded. So this is the one where we talked about retirement planning, we talked about financial well-being, Tom talked about
Training,
retention.
professional development track, talking about maybe some sort of a reward program, development program.
Yes, so it would be, so we could say financial planning, which would include current
There you
and
go.
retirement.
So,
Financial would be current, and many of these are going to be done through courses, but it would be dealing with their current financial status as well as their retirement.
so something like assist with or
Counsel where requested. I mean,
is
or at least
council
offer courses.
is council SEL or CIL?
SEL.
SEL.
And then from from the health, I would say physical and mental health.
The thing is, Judge, we've got all these programs that are little known about among the employees. For instance, the Employee Assistance Program. We've had for as long as I've been in the county, but most people don't know that we have it, or what it does, or how to access it.
So we need to improve communication of not only existing, but of,
Similarly, the what are they? Deferred benefits, the deferred compensation program. We've got at least a couple of providers in that program, but most people are not aware that it exists in the county, or what it does, or how to access it.
Improve communication to employees of all county programs? Something like that? Is that your point? Then I go back to the judge. You were talking about mental and physical.
that's the health, more of the health, individual health, both physical and mental. We need to move this whole U forward about 2 feet. Can we move this whole U forward about 2 feet? Or is that going to mess up
So there's
Jim's
an
camera?
aisle.
No, sure. It won't hurt anything. You want to slide it forward?
It might, I don't know whether we've got enough cords.
We're there.
Did you get where you wanted to get?
I think we're there. That'll get everybody but Wilder through. We're there. That's
Okay.
great.
It was just hard to read. Was that the deal?
No, they couldn't get through back here.
Oh. Okay.
We needed an aisle.
I got you. We could have just got David to move the back wall, slid everything back, right? Not a problem. Yeah.
Portable.
Okay. Improve the mental and physical health of the employees. Then there's the issues of training.
Yes.
So assess, because we talked about, I was talking to Robin about that this morning, assess and improve training, something like that.
Yes.
Well, I think there's a variety of types of training, and that's the assessment piece of it, right? Because I heard cross-training was going on pretty well, and it was done by the departments, and that's probably fine as is. But I heard mid-level, high-level
But
leadership.
again, it goes back to, first off, letting everybody know what we have, and I agree with what Roy said, the improving the communication, because I don't think, for the most part, folks know what we've got. So maybe the first thing should be improve communication of current programs, which is objective 2.
And training.
Yeah, but that may be the most important part of of goal 3 is communicate what we have, then determine where we have holes, and then move to fill those Of course, that may be getting down into the initiatives itself, but. All of it. It'd be our health, it would be all of the other, it'd be the training programs that Larry puts up. It would be,
Well, I mean, I know we can probably prove on it, but I would say, shout out to HR, I mean, we know exactly what training classes, the net, wow, I mean, that stuff is constantly pushing out, training. And I know we can prove on it, Judge, but I'm just saying in that respect, that helps us, everybody in my office.
but there's a lot of offices that claim they don't. And that's, I mean, I don't disagree that it's out there. We've got to figure out a better way to make sure that those folks who don't think it's out there know how to access it and be, and figure it out.
Is this addressing like a succession plan or something else somewhere in there?
I think all of that's included in that. I think everything, from a training standpoint, it could be the department heads or the employees or all of us saying, you know, we would like to see training in this area, and we don't, and it's not there. So again, it's first off establishing exactly what we've got, then letting department heads, elected officials, whomever say, you know, we see a hole right here that doesn't seem to be, a need that doesn't seem to be met. Let's see if we can move it in that area. The employees may say, you know, look, I'd like more information or communication on which one of the three deferred comp programs we have, and so that I can evaluate where I'd want to do it.
Jack.
Yes, sir.
Objective 2
Yes.
is basically duplicate what we have over there, objective 3.
It is. Establish a system to communicate policy and initiatives across the county, improve communication to employees of all county programs and training. It is the same. The question would be, where does it best live? So let me pull this back down again. So the number 2 is around operational efficiency. Number 3 is around employee. Seems like it probably lives better in 3, right? Do you agree? The communication lives. Well, no. Actually, it's talked about specific.
We already, like Mayor Louise just mentioned, many of these programs are already there. But the way we communicate to our employees, and maybe more than just communication, to encourage. Somehow we need to come up with programs to encourage people
To use them.
to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then that gets into, when encourage them using it, then we as part of this have to balance the fact that we are running a counter customers. Everybody wants to go get blood, and everybody wants to go do this. So we've got to be careful. That's what we battle as department heads. I know I do. While they're there, balance.
Sure.
We got customers.
Right. I agree with Mel. Ultimately, I mean, people going to have to take personal responsibility. Ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, when we're going down this objective of take advantage, remember us, that we have to balance and say, I'm sorry, Terry, you can't go. Because 10 people are at lunch right now.
You know, we really do. If you look at our quarterly agendas, which are producible, or our new employee meetings, or what I do when they're deputized, all of these things are mentioned. Yeah, we have to allow these folks to go do some of this stuff on their own time, rather than take them off the floor for an hour or 2 at a time. It just kills us. We're gonna have to be asking for new people. We can't run it the same way we're doing. We all got deadlines to meet every day. You got a judge sitting up there that wants that information when they want it. And we have to bend ourselves to those needs first. I'm sure the commissioners understand that, but it is about.
There's a balance, yeah.
As Mary Louise says.
Yep. So back to Commissioner Wynn's point, we have communication and communication. Where does it live best? In Goal 2, where it's actually mentioned, or Goal 3, because it's an employee one? Seems like we don't need it in both places, right?
But I thought the communication in 2 places actually has to depend on
Chris, it's on.
how to help us. Yep.
Do they, Chris?
But the first communication was really about county policies and, you know, and we thought that's actually what we were focused on at the time. And then this time we're really talking about, as Commissioner Wynn said, more about how we encourage and make and do some marketing around some of these programs that we have that really are good programs, but employees apparently are not necessarily very informed or educated about them. So, except that we want to collapse the two, or maybe I did not understand.
No, you're right. You're right. This one is what it says. It's programs and training. What's
Yes.
available for us
Right.
to do? How do we encourage that? This one is like policies and updates, initiatives. But the question is, should we have one overarching one, and those would be
You can have it
initiatives?
as communication.
Is that-
But everything we do up here is, the success of it is going to be determined based upon how we communicate.
Right.
Not only what we're looking for, but all the other stuff. So, you know, I would see communications as being, whether it's an objective or an initiative, it's something that should appear in every one of the 6 goals that we've got up there.
Okay, so you're okay with it twice? Okay.
We just need to collaborate to make sure that the communication methodologies don't duplicate. from one
Right, right. Yeah, and Chris, good catch. They were meant to be different focus. You're right. So they'd have different initiatives. That's the key, right? Thank you. Okay, what else? So we got the financial well-being of the employee. We got communication. We got the mental and physical. We've got gaps in training.
How do we encourage innovation, and how do we
Right.
reward excellence?
Those are two things I'm anxious to get to, but I don't think we're done over here yet. We haven't addressed employee retention. We haven't addressed succession planning. We haven't addressed employee satisfaction.
Do you want those to be separate? So improve employee satisfaction would be
I'm
one.
just throwing things out that need to be dealt
agree.
with.
I'm questioning whether those don't need to be
Initiatives.
part of the goal versus.
Well, let's look at
Succession and what Commissioner Brooks talked about, I think it has to do with operational efficiency. Okay?
Well, it's also succession planning.
If you don't address them as objectives,
Right. I agree that we need to have objective around that.
that's where we are.
And that really is about innovation as well.
Could be. But innovation to me is something much more scintillating than that.
Retention.
Separately, just improve retention.
All right, Tom, that was your item, and you're gonna sit there.
And then there's succession planning. I'll write them and you can tweak them.
I think the retention should be part of the initiative of somehow of continuity planning, you know, that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, was a bigger, because succession planning is continuity planning as well.
It is.
So if we had succession and retention as initiatives underneath that, measurable initiatives, right?
Yeah, continuity planning include, you know, retention and the disaster recovery.
Employee retention is
Come on, Andy.
what I brought up yesterday. Our turnovers in the bottom 2 grades, 16 and 15.
Maybe you ought to stop ticking them off.
I would think retention is a bigger problem for some departments than others.
Sure. Always, a lot of time dependent upon the work.
Again, that's why I brought up the reclass, because these people look at what other people are doing, and they're getting paid a lot more money. And again, those bottom 2 grades are where
I lose people to law firms and other departments.
But I think this one can address both, Tom, where it's retention of the areas that are problematic. It could be hiring for Lou in the areas that are difficult to hire, and it can be succession planning for your retirements. I mean, that can all be in there as initiatives. The one we didn't get to, and it's in here, is innovation. Good luck with that one, right?
Yeah, but that's a critical piece.
It absolutely is. It's part of the reason it's so hard, because who does it well, right? Some people here do it well, but how do you put a policy in place or something that actually encourages that? So you're right. It's a cut above if you can do that. Yes, Robin?
A few years ago, we actually had two different programs. I think one was called Bright Ideas and one was Caring Ideas. Yeah. And actually employees were able to submit ideas for improvements or savings, and then they received rewards for those. I think both programs kind of fizzled over times. We did it 2 different times.
How long ago?
It was probably 10 plus. Yeah, it's 10 plus years ago. I'm sorry, 10 plus years ago, a long time ago.
10 plus years ago, I still have some of the files down in the office. The real flaw was we really didn't get innovative ideas from the rank and file employees. They all came from upper level supervisors and managers who really that was their job to start off with, but they all focused from a very, very high level, and most of them really weren't measurable in the scheme of things. So there were, it got to be, you had to be very, very creative to even assess points to these ideas.
So that
we can enhance the program. I think it's a good concept, but we can enhance the program by pinpointing on a specific issue within the county. Let's say, hey, we have problem with X. Okay? Those of you who come up with good ideas to help us solve this problem, then you get the following rewards and so forth. So if we pinpoint to a specific issue, then we may be able to get better results from the program.
That's a good point, Andy. We did that at Florida Power and Light, where we said specifically in these 4 areas we're looking for ideas, and we kept them narrow enough so that the people couldn't just say, well, clean the restrooms or shut the door or inane stuff. So I think that makes sense. But I guess that's initiatives, right? The question is, do we put down here something like develop and deploy ways to encourage innovation, and we're going to have to be innovative about ways to do that.
That's correct. Companies, a lot of organizations, they are using what they call the Idea Factory.
Uh-huh.
And with a prior employer, I actually implemented a system. So what I was saying is that a lot of companies today are using what they call the Idea Factory. And if I had a prior employer that was all about this, and it was actually implemented in a way that was employee focused, not because they wanted to have ideas come from the bottom up. And there was all kinds of things wrapped around it that really created a way to, for instance, if an idea came up that that ultimately found its way into implementation, the employee received a very specific reward. There was one very bright idea that came out of that to reduce the way that they were doing cleaning in the jails. It was a very simple thing, the way they bought, the detergent and all that stuff. And so
I think it's going to take a lot of analysis on this one.
Do it here, and I'll move this over.
Because we should be encouraging our supervisors and our senior managers to work for continual improvement, not just to be sitting there and waiting to get a cash reward or some type of other reward because they were slow to react on an issue. So, I mean, this is something as a takeaway. We can put it there, but when we get to the initiative piece on that thing, we need to really study that because we've heard a lot of different ideas and pros and cons about some of the things we've done in the past.
Yeah, we don't want any bad side effects.
That's right.
Unintended consequences.
Well, one of the practical issues here, I put in an innovation committee in my department that's been running for 10 years. And all that comes out of it is stuff that is the department specific.
I don't know that we have a cross-departmental group.
You know, quite frankly, Tom, if it's department-specific, then I think it serves its purpose.
Well, that's why we keep it narrow like that. We've got about 5 committees, and that's one of them.
That's great. I mean, that's what's done.
Keep up the good work.
I think it's 6, but it varies. Doug appoints them and reappoints them as necessary.
Just as an observation, innovation is a different concept from continuous improvement.
Yeah, it's a lot harder, isn't it? A lot harder. I mean, continuous improvement's great. You're looking for...
You got to have both.
Right. Innovation's more dramatic,
Yes.
kind of a leapfrog as opposed to just tweaking.
Right.
Innovation is what my golf game needs, not continuous improvement.
Okay, don't a lot of these ideas come out of a result of the budget process? Well, we did 3. I remember a few years ago when David Phillips and Facilities came up with the idea of shutting down the HVAC systems 30 minutes early. I mean, that's an example of what we're talking about, just for my edification.
I agree with you, and quite frankly, I think that sometimes that the court doesn't realize just how, during the budget process, how the budget department actually creates better working processes. So.
Yeah, under objective 7, can you add to encourage innovation and reward excellence?
Sure. I think JD took my marker off. You didn't do it? Okay. I know you wanted to get up here and facilitate, but develop and deploy ways to encourage...
Take over.
I'm sorry?
I'm about to take over.
That's what I was afraid of. Develop and deploy ways to encourage innovation and reward, or to encourage and reward innovation.
And excellence.
Get on your tummy down there.
Number 4?
You mean number 1?
Sorry. E1. Sorry about that. Gonna keep me straight. Oops.
I have an editorial comment, if I may.
Cute grammar.
On that one, it says healthcare, and I would respectfully request that it be just health. I think that's more encompassing, based on the conversation from yesterday.
I would agree.
Thank you.
More global.
Quality of life for residents and businesses. Whew, that's the big one.
Well, before we get to specific objectives, let's talk about how to approach that.
Okay.
Number 1, collaboration is going to be a key to addressing each and every one of the items under that goal.
So that's an objective, something around collaboration.
Yes, something around collaboration.
So here's what I was thinking, but shoot me down if I'm not there. Enhance the quality of life of residents and businesses. We'll have to find a way to measure that. Some kind of a survey or something, I would think, right? Then we need to do the collaboration. That might be another objective. And then the third thing would be, it sounds like for each of these departments, we need measurements in those departments that align to what the public tells us is important for them to get. For example, Mary Lou, right? Speedy response. You do it well, but you know that's important to them. So that aligns to satisfaction that you would see in a survey if you asked them, how we doing, right? So I just wonder if that's another objective, is deploy quality of life metrics to each department as appropriate or something.
Just for, I guess, something maybe that, I don't know if we want to really get into discussing it, but a big part of that number one is justice and public safety.
Mm-hmm.
And justice and public safety aren't at this table by their choice.
Right, that's correct.
Justice and public, well.
But it's still the biggest part of our budget.
It is.
But the district attorney's office and the sheriff's department represent over 35% of our budget, probably over 40% of our employees. They're not represented here at their choice.
You know,
I find that a problem.
Yeah, I think we probably all see that.
That's
yeah.
a big problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
What
The public needs to know about that.
What can be done about that, or do you want to not talk about that today?
No, I don't have a problem talking about it.
I didn't hear what he said.
The fact that the sheriff's department and the DA are not represented here today, and they make up a big part of our budget.
Pull the mics closer, okay?
Well, they represent over right at 35% of the overall budget of the county, approximately $155 million. And probably, yeah, and I appreciate that. But it's about 40% of our total employees, those two departments. And they're not here. They're not at the table at their choice.
Ray is here.
Huh?
Ray is here.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate that.
Okay. But the sheriff's department is not.
And is Ray here because he's representing the DA's office, or is he here because we're meeting?
He's here because he represents us.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
And we appreciate him being here.
One of the things when we were talking to the judges, though, because I agree with you, Commissioner, you know, those are the two big players that aren't here. There was two things we heard when we talked to the majority of the judges. And it was they needed to have adequate courtrooms to conduct their business. And they needed to have adequate information systems, because things are becoming much more automated on how they do their trials. And I think, Jack, you sat in on maybe one or two more than I did, but those were for the judges' part.
For the judges, yes.
And I'm not criticizing the judges.
No, I understand. I just wanted to point that out.
When we had our initial meeting, there were a number of judges that came to that meeting. I'm assuming that a number of them participated in Jack's. When he interviewed.
That's what I was just looking for. Greg's not here today. I mean,
They did, Judge. I mean,
but I think there are things that go on within the judiciary that they could also benefit, and we could also benefit. They have collectively gotten together in the past and helped with jail pop and with the way cases are going through. And I wish that, at a minimum, that Greg had been here, because I think there's some recent encounters where I think that there's things that they could do potentially. We haven't talked about it. We haven't heard them talk about it. And I wish they were here to participate in that. And you're right. And by the time you add in the judges, the DAs, and the sheriff's department, we're probably talking about a whole lot more than just 35. We're probably getting very close to 50 or 60% of our budget.
because remember, the administration of justice also includes a large portion of both the clerk's offices.
But they're here.
You're right. So the administration of justice, it'll fall almost 60 to 70% of our total budget.
Well, one of the things that's going to help the administration of justice is the adult case management system.
For sure.
When we get
that standardized product where the IT department's only having to maintain one particular brand of software, that's going to help immensely with across the whole scope with judges, clerks, DA, sheriff, the criminal part of it. That is going to be a huge boon to this county. We've been working on that 2 years. And it's probably going to take 2 to 4 more years to get all that implemented all the way through the civil and the family. But the benefits of that should be enormous on a number of these things up here.
Yeah, agree. So, you just want to move on from the elephant in the room? Okay. So I tried to capture Commissioner Brooks. Help me with this. Ensure that there's collaboration across departments to serve residents and businesses.
There needs to be internal collaboration across departments, and there needs to be collaboration with external groups, organizations, businesses, school districts, other governmental entities in order to accomplish what really needs to be accomplished under this goal.
So ensure that there is internal collaboration across departments as well as external collaboration.
These things that I envision under these external goals are something that we can't do by ourselves.
Right. Any comments on that one? Ensure that there is internal collaboration across departments as well as external collaboration to serve residents and to better serve residents and businesses.
And somehow I've just got a nagging feeling that trying to establish metrics to measure quality of life is going to be so difficult that maybe we ought to call it something else.
Customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
Or resident satisfaction or something like that.
And I agree. As we go through this, if we can't establish a metric, I don't think it needs to be on our list.
What counties usually do that I work with have an overarching, call it what you want, citizen resident satisfaction survey that they do. They first, we talked about it before, focus groups to determine what is important to the residents, then surveys to get a statistical quantitative number, what percentage of them are satisfied and what are they dissatisfied with. And so then and that's the higher level, so we could change quality of life to resident satisfaction. And then at the department level we say, okay, so what does Tom do in his department? He does the following, and what's important to them? Well, accuracy and timeliness. Okay, so how does Tom measure accuracy and timeliness as well as productivity? Those are his measures. If he's highly productive, he's quick at what he does, and he's very accurate, he's aligning to citizen satisfaction. So, I mean, that's how it usually works, but I get you.
If that's the case, then we need to change quality of life up there to constituent or resident satisfaction. What do you think?
So, how about just enhance the satisfaction for the residents and businesses? No? Or do you want it some other way? Whatever.
Well, we need to try to convince these people that we're not the enemy and that we're not their adversaries. And right now, that's the attitude.
That is the attitude that you're going to find out here on the 4 meetings that I went to this last week. That is the attitude. And that is not healthy for us. It's not healthy for government. It's not healthy for the country. And yet when you sit down with them and go through what it is we do and why we do it, there is some understanding. It's just it's not going out, that knowledge is not going out broadly enough.
I agree with you on that, but my feeling is that that is a deliberate political strategy on the part of some to make government the enemy, and you're not going to change public perception unless you change the strategy.
You're absolutely correct. The people have their own agenda and utilize that. When you get down below the ones that are grabbing the microphone, there are people down there that are reasonable people that will listen to
Why we are here. What is our function? and they seem to be interested in it.
I don't disagree with that, Tom. The problem is most of them don't know who we are in the first place.
I think you're going to too many meetings, Tom.
I'm trying to do my part to make sure they understand what it is that we do. Glenn, you know, there was something that came up here. Somebody said we had low debt. That's not what's being put up on the board out in some of these meetings.
But it is a fact.
And we need to communicate those facts, not fail to go to the meetings and just let them think whatever they want to think.
So how do we build what you just said into the context?
I don't get invited to those meetings.
Yeah, we'd love to have you go to some of those meetings with us, Roy. Then they'd have somebody else throw them tomatoes at.
I don't get any invitation to your meeting either anymore.
But I think you're right. Again, for a long time, I have been trying to champion the cause of what is county government and what do we do. And I will tell you that in spite of speaking to it every time I go to a chamber or anything like that, there's still, most folks don't understand. And I don't know what the effort is, but I will tell you that if it's really a public relations campaign, it's going to be a very costly one. And I'm not sure any of us are going to be willing to do that. I'm not saying you're not right. I just don't know how we do it. And right now, elected officials are held in about the lowest esteem that they've ever been because, for the most part, people focus on the federal government.
Yeah.
And we get flattered with that. There's no question about that.
So you know, it's a great point, and I think it's one that we need to spend more time talking about. I just don't know when it comes right down to it how, again, it's going to go back to, I think we can throw a lot of stuff up on the board right now, but when we get to the point of trying to establish a metric, we may eliminate a lot of this stuff because I don't think there's, depending upon how we're going to incentivize people to make or to meet these metrics, if we're not going to be able to measure success, then we really shouldn't be putting incentives to that we can't measure. And to that same end is if we don't put anything out here that incentivizes folks to try to succeed, then I don't think we're going to accomplish anything with this. And if we do, then maybe those folks who didn't show up at the table and see that there might be fixing to lose the opportunity to attract dollars might show up at the table, or at least, because the big thing we're going to do after we get all this done is ask each department to set their goals and to begin to define their metrics.
Somebody heard you, Glenn. They just walked in.
To define their metrics.
We can't make them do that.
No, we can't. But if they don't, and then they lose a pool of money, they lose the ability to even be considered in some percentage of that pool of money, then we'll hear a great gnashing of teeth about how they were eliminated.
They lose the goodwill of the court, which can be expressed in a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah, but we've never been willing to do that. And it goes, and part of me says, as much as I'm sometimes the one that argues that we should, it then begins to put us more in a whack-a-mole mentality, which is the one at the East, which I've never particularly cared for either. But I mean, there's a lot of things we do where we could give incentives. If we were to say we're going to take $4 million and we're going to put that and divvy that out based upon the way people accomplish their goals. Well, now we've got 50% of the department or the county that may not be eligible to that. The other 50% of us are going to be real excited. And whether it encourages the sheriff and the DA and the judges and other folks to all get on board. And again, it's mostly, it's the DAs and the sheriffs. It's not really the judges that haven't met. The DA and the sheriff's office basically refuse to participate.
I don't know why the DA and the sheriff refuse to participate. I believe in order for us to obtain and sustain the success of this plan, we need to somehow convince the DA and the sheriff and the leadership over there that it would be in their best interest and their employees' best interest and in the public's best interest to participate in the execution and achievement of some of these goals. And we can be pretty creative in how we can do that.
Does that policy that you wrote up that mirrors Miami-Dade, does it apply to everyone in the county, every elected official, everybody?
It's a county-wide.
So if somebody doesn't comply with that, business plan, metrics, so forth, what happens?
We go on to the next year and life goes on.
Oh, okay, big time teeth. Gotcha.
It's an the only carrot or stick that we have is the budget and the money that we, kind of allocate in that department in that particular point in time. Rightly so, I don't disagree one time, because the thing that we hear, and it's very true, is that they were elected by the same folks we were, and we weren't elected to be their bosses. We were elected to set the budget and to then allocate that budget out among the various departments.
Our structure is very different from the one in Miami-Dade.
But essentially, we can affect.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
We could penalize, but it would mean we would have to institute a policy that says we're going to penalize folks who do not want to participate and be a part of this deal, and that's
managed through intimidation.
Yeah, and that's not a good way. Collaboration is a whole lot better
I
than
think we can
intimidation.
focus on the 50% that are collaborating and proactively engaging with us.
And so we don't penalize them from where they are, but they don't get the incentive of what in the future.
It's interesting because
the elephant in the room is that we cannot be successful in implementing this strategic plan when only half of the county is on board.
But we can be successful within the half that is. Employee health and, again, we would love to make it, I always go back to my well-being statement. We would love to have all the employees participating in doing that. If we get 50% of them, we're 50% better off than or we may be 25% better off than where we are today. We have made a difference and we've begun to move down. So one of our goals may be as a group that within 4 to 5 years, all of our departments are participating in this program, whereas initially it may just be that we have, 50% or 60% or whatever. Maybe that's our goal, is to try to find a way to encourage participation by everybody as opposed to by
This
some.
is a marathon. It's going to take several strategic planning sessions to really achieve the effect that we desire. It's going to take some time.
And for those of us who don't like to run races, then maybe it's a tournament, and this is just the first game in the tournament to determine who the champion is.
well, even if you had everybody on board, it's still a marathon.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen overnight because it's about change, and that just takes a while.
So maybe in all of this thing, one of our goals should be, as a county, to have all departments participating. And part of that measurement will be that all departments set goals in the different areas that pertain to their department. Because, for example, the transportation thing that we have coming up, HR is not going to have a whole lot to do with our transportation infrastructure plan for the county. But they certainly would have something to do with a lot of the other ones. So everybody should be submitting a plan that addresses where they are engaged in one of the 6 goals.
Right.
And if they're not, then we've kind of failed to get them into the process.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I want to make sure he's dead. The fact that we've only got 50% participation in this process challenges certain long-held assumptions of ours about who we are. We have always prided ourselves on being this county family and being able to work collaboratively, and we're different from the folk to the east because we don't have the internecine warfare and all of that crap. Well, that appears not to be the case.
The one thing, and I thought about that a little bit this morning as we were talking about all this, I think in the past, from our strategic planning process, we came together as a commissioners court, we set our objectives, our goals, we prettied them all up, and we distributed them. But we didn't ask the individual departments to participate to a great extent. We didn't ask them really to submit goals that we set down and talked with them about. We just simply set some goals out there, and then we really never went down and dusted off the deal. I think this process is, once we do all this, we're going to give it all to them and say, okay, now submit back to us by a certain date. And that's one of the questions that I have later on is, what's the next step? But it would seem to me like we're going to say to them, take these goals, take these objectives, go back to your department with your folks, and bring us back your list of what you're going to do to help us accomplish this, the metrics, the mileposts, and then we're all going to, we're going to sit down and say, well, we think this is a little too aggressive, or this may not be aggressive enough. But that's where we've always stopped. Once we got past this, we pretty well closed up, declared success, and walked away.
Yeah, big difference in this situation.
Well, if I may throw out one thing, I can tell you that we did not really
understand the scope of what our involvement needed to be. We didn't know whether it was going to be, 3 weeks of a consultant sitting in our office. We did not know the product that we needed to produce. And I would hope if we're going to have another one of these sessions, that we have a clearer idea of exactly what we are supposed to bring to the table. Maybe that was my fault, that we've been so distracted with all these other things that are on our plate. But I'd like to have a clearer idea of what is expected of the district clerk's office, and I certainly heard some of those comments from some of the other elected and appointed officials. What are we supposed to do with this?
Well, Tom, I think that's exactly, we all came in here to establish goals, to establish objectives, and that's why y'all have been asked to participate as we've gone through this process. But I do believe that the next step is everybody going back to their areas and saying, okay, now that we've got goals, now that we have objectives, how does that, how can we, in each department, do you have a dog in the hunt on transportation? No. Okay, I don't got to worry about goal number 2 under the external. But when it has to do with all of these other things, I've got goals that I think I can plug in, and then we can all bring those goals back together, and we can go through them, and we can discuss them, and we can determine that, okay, here's what we've all agreed to. But I don't think any of us came in here with a homework assignment except for, let's establish what our goals are, and once we leave here, hopefully that's kind of where we'll go. And then we may decide, as you begin to look at each one of these, that some of them are just impossible for us to be able to quantify and measure. And then we might decide to kick that objective or that goal out at that point in time.
That's a good point. This is a living process. We're going to have to be very flexible to changing things around and make sure that it works for us. The objective here is to make it work and actually improving performance and achieving the results that we want. So
We should have a structure, Tom, that we offer to everybody with training on coaching on how to get it done, right? So people come back, you don't have to guess what it is. What do you need from me? Because I have metrics, but specifically, And it uses the alignment principles that the judge was talking about. So goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which ones do I align to? How do I align? And usually you figure alignment based on what you do and what you measure, and then what am I going to do to contribute?
So can we go on so we can?
Yes. Okay, we're in.
Just get closer to that lunchtime.
We're on goal number. Well,
Are we?
are we okay with goal number 1 external, which is on the screen, to go to goal number 2?
Let's
go to 2.
You want to go to 2?
Yeah, let's move on to 2.
Okay.
We can always come back.
Yeah. Okay, go to 2. All right, so external 2, strategically engage the public and private stakeholders to improve the mobility of people and goods in Tarrant County and the North Texas region. Is objective 1 develop a strategic transportation plan, something like that?
I would accept that.
Or develop and deploy a strategic transportation plan?
And deploy.
And deploy. And then
Instead of deploy, I might put prioritize.
Develop, prioritize, and deploy.
Yeah, I noticed this was in the last strategic plan 6 years ago, so I see why you say prioritize. Develop, prioritize, and deploy a strategic transportation plan.
Quite a bit accomplished since the last 6 years.
There have been, but that was, oh, wait, even in the transportation area, yeah. But you didn't have a plan, right? Do you have an overarching plan?
We did write it down.
Okay, you had a plan.
Identify partners or identify those public and private stakeholders.
Now, is that step 1 of trying to put together a plan? Is that more of an initiative?
I really think that we've got to identify who wants to work with us on this, and then we can develop it.
Okay, I got you. I see what you're saying.
I think we're gonna have to look at all other municipalities and the state to see what they've already got developed, not reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And see if we can't patch it all together.
So
That's why I think you're exactly right, and that's why it's going to be critical, at least within the county, to bring in. We know what the transportation plan is for the region within this county. It's been approved. It goes to TxDOT. It goes to the federal government. That's identified. What we don't know is what each one of the individual cities or the contiguous counties have planned for roads inside of our county or leading up to the borders of our county.
But Fort Worth does have a master plan.
Which leads me to want to opine that we can't build enough roads to take care of this problem. Somehow we're going to have to become part of a regional rail system, and that needs to be one of our objectives, is to try to divorce ourselves from having to build so many highways.
And I agree, and I think that, but I'm seeing objective 1. I don't see transportation plan as
just roads.
Just roads.
Just roads.
It's
But when you started to explain it, all you mentioned was roads and TxDOT.
Well, maybe you put intermodal as an adjective to transportation plan.
Well, if you go back, one of the things I said was in our plan, our transportation plan at the federal and at the state level, that does include something more than just roads. That's where you're going to find the rail program for the North Texas region as it pertains to transit. And I would think that one of our public partners in Tarrant County will be the T.
The T, what's that?
That's our transit authority.
Identify. go back to Commissioner Johnson's point. I think somehow we need to include that in objective 2 as well.
Do you want to
Identify
step?
the public and
Oh.
private stakeholders and existing plan or whatever,
And leverage existing plans?
and leveraging existing plans, right? Leveraging or integrate or whatever.
I think most people refer to them as thoroughfare plans.
Okay.
We're back to pouring concrete.
Not necessarily. A thoroughfare plan can also include if you're talking a rail system, could also include rail.
But it could also include express bus lanes.
So I added the word intermodal again. Hopefully you're okay with that.
A thoroughfare is not a railroad.
It's very much a thoroughfare. They have all the right in the world.
We okay with this one? This is a big one, but
I think objective 3 should be to retool, restructure, or empower the transportation department to be able to support the strategic transportation plan, whatever, somehow.
That would be the Tarrant County
The town,
Transportation Department.
empower or retool, or however you want to use it.
so Bill, any questions on that one? What?
Instead of thoroughfare plans, I would just say transportation plans. Down there, it's just an intermodal transportation plan.
Right, but do you have any question about the statement that was just made about, let's see, empowering you to, what was it, Commissioner Wynn, empower the Tarrant County Transportation Department to retool?
Maybe the precinct maintenance centers as well. So whatever the plan is, we got to have the capability to make it happen.
I think it's all going to I think all of that's going to center, though, around how are we going to fund the implementation of Objective 1.
Right. We won't be able to do it all, but certain initiatives we may have to start.
So empower the Tarrant County Transportation Department and the precinct maintenance centers to retool to assist in the implementation of the plan. Okay. And I guess my question again to Bill, you understand why there's, I mean, what's not in the precinct maintenance centers, what's not in the transportation department right now that would have to change?
Well, currently, the Transportation Department typically looks at county roads.
Right.
Unincorporated
areas, right.
Or working in partnership with cities on their major arterials or minor arterials.
Okay.
But generally, they don't look at what I think is probably the most important thing, and that is the major freeways, whether they be a freeway, a managed lane, a toll road or proposed toll road.
Or lead-on system stuff.
Yes.
Express.
And the multimodal part of it with transit and rail and things like that. So they're not really involved in those, nor is the county on the major projects typically involved in funding. It's mainly state and federal funding funded through gas tax dollars or toll revenue or managed lane revenue. So it's not necessarily Tarrant County tax dollars. Could be, but our history has, so far, there hasn't been that significant amount of tax dollars, if any, put into those projects, those bigger projects.
There are some on-system projects that are a part of our transportation bond program that have gotten funding under that.
So That's good, and I guess somebody said, as we determine what the plan is and to implement it, Bill, some of your
We need to develop an expertise in some of these areas.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. I just didn't want to beat around the bush, right? You'll need,
We have some of that expertise, but we don't have all of it.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was right out there. Right, thank you.
That's what empowerment means, right?
Yeah, but I wanted to be real clear. Yeah. So, thank you.
I wonder if we need to add funding sources in objective 2 as well.
Determine the best funding sources.
Objective number 2, B, item B.
Sorry.
Not only leveraging existing intermodal transportation plans, but funding sources as well.
Good.
That's to your point, Commissioner.
All right. What time is lunch? Noon-ish?
Why don't we do 3?
And then have lunch?
And if y'all want to break for lunch, we can do that.
Okay. A little motivation there. All right.
May we know what comes after lunch? May we know what comes after lunch?
What's next?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that is the question. Once we finish 3, what else is there for us to accomplish?
Recess.
So if you want to have any input into what the initiatives might be, some brainstorming of the initiatives would be next. Although we're going to then, I think, hand that off to different departments.
I think the initiative should be derived from the department.
Okay, so I didn't know if you wanted input or just say, okay, let's hand these off to the departments and make some assignments to get those. And then we need to determine, to Judge Whitley's point, next steps, right? So one of the next steps is create the initiatives, put them on some kind of a defined charter where you have milestones and bring them back to this group for approval. But then what about deployment?
If we're going to allow the departments to come up with and to come back to us with the initiatives, then it would seem to me like what we would have left today would be the objectives under 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then defining the next steps.
Right. Including deployment to departments, meaning of metrics and things like that.
Okay, and I guess, my thought, and this is my preference, the rest of y'all may have a different preference. My preference would be, let's go ahead, we're 20 minutes till 12 right now. I'd rather keep moving through this because at least, and you tell me whether you think my estimations are wrong, if we have 2 or 3 objectives under 3, and then we move into the next step type thing, I think that might involve another 30 minutes worth of discussion.
Seems to make sense.
So we may be through around 12:30, between 12:30 and 1, and I'd rather go forward than to come back for 30 minutes
Okay.
after lunch.
Okay.
But that's, that's
fine.
You want to take a vote?
Let's go to
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Onward and up.
Y'all are gonna go till when?
It's probably going to be
till we finish.
12:30 to 1, somewhere in there, Tom.
Tom, go get a snack.
Okay, proactively collaborate with cities. So this is economic development.
This just reduced the amount of time we have left to about 15 minutes.
Again, there's a need to communicate with our stakeholders on what economic development tools and incentives are available. And how to access them.
And then maybe also some communications with the different educational providers on, where we need to retool or increase the educational objectives.
Communicate with our stakeholders.
That may not be the right
No,
wording.
that's not just quite right, because we don't actually have a primary role in education. But we can work with our educational partners to help enhance what they do. And
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if we're going to say we're trying to diversify the local economy, part of that is making sure that we have the human, if we're talking about human capital, that means that they're educated to the point to where they can complement what we're bringing in.
absolutely.
If we're not going to put something up there about communicating, I mean, we're not going to provide that education.
No.
So if that's what we're talking about in terms of human, then let's take human out and just know that someone's going to have to communicate with the educational institutions about what they need to be training our people to know. And I don't have a problem with that, but if we put human in there, it deals mostly with how are we going to make sure they're educated to the economy that we're trying to bring into this area.
Judge Whitley?
Yes.
And part of the educational part is that the truancy issue that we deal with at the JP courts and so forth, we are very much involved in that. So that part of,
Right.
we make sure we have our educated human capital. We make sure that they show up to school, and that's something that the JPs are dealing with.
Which brings up the fact that we don't have a consistent truancy policy. It varies from JP court to JP court, from school district to school district.
I agree. I'm not sure what ability we have to control that.
Well, we certainly control the JP court.
We do.
When
did that begin?
Their budgets.
The budget, it doesn't.
But really, we don't have very much control even within their budgets because the vast majority of their budget is the JP or the staff that we give. I mean, I don't disagree that we shouldn't, but realistically, I don't think we do because
Well, if we don't have a countywide truancy policy, then we certainly can't hold anybody accountable to implement it. If we have one, then it's at least a step forward.
And the other thing I don't know, I do not know, is how much of that differences in the way each court deals with truancy is dictated or is at least has been determined based upon collaboration with the school district that they may be working with.
Well, it's the school district that actually triggers the truancy issue.
But once it gets into JP court, then it becomes a court issue.
Well, the challenge is we have two levels of inconsistencies. First of all, the inconsistency at the school district level. Okay, so we are working with Arlington ISD right now and initiate basically a preventive strategy right now in conjunction with Randy Turner and his department, right? And then any of the cases filed within JPs, that's a different level of inconsistency, and that is something that I think I talked to some of the JPs and they're open in that collaboration, but they just don't have the time to work and develop that consistent policy.
Right.
So
we might
again,
look at attempting to develop a consistent policy might be one of the
but we
deals.
can't force it.
We can't, but I guess it's an objective, and that's where they're going to have to come back with initiatives that say, no, we agree or we don't. And and one of the things that I've heard has to do with the fines for truancy, because a fine for someone in the South Lake ISD may be, in order to get their attention, may be a little bit higher than a fine in Southeast Fort Worth.
So perhaps we can change objective 2 to collaborate with our educational partners and other stakeholders. That would include the JPs and the constables on where we need to improve our educational outcomes.
That's sounds good.
Can work with that.
And that involves truancy.
Yeah.
Tarrant County College is working with Arlington ISD to have that dual credit program.
It could be JP's constables, and just to say that it's not just on truancy, it could be in local businesses.
The Tarrant County College has established a satellite in a Crowley ISD school.
That's right, and they're doing the same thing with Arlington. So that collaboration, I mean, we're doing that right now in Precinct 2. We have regular meetings with UTA president and Tarrant County College president.
You said something at the end versus the educational objectives. It was kind of on where we needed to
improve our educational outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I missed that. Okay.
I suggest that on number 1, we should also include, we should be communicate with stakeholders regarding the economic development tools, opportunities and incentives. I think we should add the opportunities which they may not know about and that we need to communicate to them.
And is our stakeholders, are our stakeholders the other cities? Is that what we're saying? Communicate with, is stakeholders the right word, or is it really our other?
Could be cities, could be
cities, it could be chambers of commerce.
It could be JPS, taxing entity, the taxing
Could be other governmental entities.
Could be.
Stakeholders is probably the right word.
Okay, stakeholders sounds like
Could
it's
be
the right
Lockheed. I wonder if we should consider development, some sort of a guideline of how to use the economic development tools as well.
We remember the one thing, Lisa's not here, I guess, but she
Right.
brought up it'd be good to have some kind of an overarching policy plan, something, that does
Right.
that.
We need to, exactly, because, I mean, I'm facing certain situation right now in Arlington that in which I was told that Tarrant County doesn't use 381. Okay, and that's what the city.
Don't do 380s.
And so 380, 381s and so forth.
Are we allowed to?
Yes,
We're allowed to do that, but it's been the policy of this court not to do it because it goes beyond what the parameters are for tax abatements.
But I don't know that as a court, we've discussed that in the last, we may have just had some brief discussions, but it's not a discussion as a court as a whole, I think, that we've had since I've been on the court.
I haven't
And
had it.
remember when we finalized the Denton County line, we had one group up there that Denton County had issued a 381 agreement with.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is we have not sat down and, as a court, really talked about the whole concept of 381 and whether the policy we've had in the past is the one that we want to continue to have in the future.
When was that, 05 or 06?
It would have been 10 years, it was in 06, because it took us 10 years to get that deal getting done.
Is after Hampton went out of office.
Yeah, he went out, it was in 97 we started it, and it was in probably 2006, 2007 when we finished it.
Commissioner Wynn, you want to change that number 3? Reword it in some way?
An act of, not necessarily, is that, I'm more thinking of not only a economic development plan, but also some sort of a guideline on how to, when to use a certain tool, when not to use it, and so forth,
So
I don't know what that means.
Procedures?
I would say to you, I mean, when you, in my mind, when you say we're going to develop an economic plan, it then says we're going to begin going out and doing everything we can to attract businesses.
That's
that
not the
we're
way-
going to be proactive.
That's not the way it works, right?
And I don't see that as being what we are to be doing, because I think at the point we do that, then we're going to become in conflict with 40 out of the 41 cities on everything that we do.
Exactly. So
I think what is trying to be gotten at here is a plan for the use of the incentives that we have at our disposal for how and when.
Right.
And under what circumstances we use those incentives.
And I don't disagree with that either, but again, what that's going to mean is, are we going to try to put strict things in place which says that when the city of Fort Worth comes to us and says they want to do this, we're gonna say, well, no, wait a minute, we've got these rules here, and we're not gonna go back on that, as opposed to taking each situation. They don't come up frequently enough that I think we should have a set of policies that say exactly what we think we're gonna try to anticipate, as opposed to looking at them each one individually. Because if a big employer comes in and we say, well, now, wait a minute, this doesn't quite fit in our policy or our plan, then at that point in time, what we're going to find ourselves doing in all likelihood is amending our plan.
Develop guidelines?
Guideline, that's the word that I use, some sort of a guideline. You know, the economic development tools, some work well, some are a little bit riskier.
Tell me where we've been constrained, or tell me where a plan would have helped us either do something or not do something that we've done since you've been on the court.
Well, I mean, I gave a specific example, the Lamar Overlay Project in Arlington, and a developer and the city of Arlington have accomplished, they basically acquired 3 huge apartments, planning to redevelop the entire project, and the city of Arlington has been asking us to participate in a 381. Okay, and we've gone back and forth maybe a couple of times, and we didn't go anywhere because apparently it was understood that we have a policy that we don't deal with 381. And
okay, so now what you're asking us to do is put in more policies that will add to this confusion, as opposed to possibly going back and revisiting the 381 and saying that, no, we're not going to have a blanket policy that says we're not going to do 381s. We're going to look at whatever you bring to us, and at that point in time determine whether we want to do it or not.
I'm okay with that too, because my understanding right now is we don't do 381, period.
Okay, now.
And I was told that we have a policy, but I haven't seen a court order or anything as such. So.
And the only reason we have, I mean, GK is correct. The only reason we have some 381s right now is because we kind of, as a court, made the decision or made a policy that when we took over more of, when we corrected the alignment of the line in some businesses which Denton County had given some incentives to, came into Tarrant County, we said we were not going to penalize or do away with any of those types of incentives. Again, though, I would say if you've got a 381 that you think we need to be looking at and addressing, let's bring it to the court. We can always change a policy, but when we set those up, then what that does is it takes away your ability to say yes or no. It doesn't, so I'm just not sure as a court that we've ever wanted to do those things that restrict us from being able to say yes or no.
So the question, I mean, Lisa brought up the lack of a countywide economic development vision. She didn't bring up need for guidelines. We're assuming she knows how to utilize those things.
Yes, I remember talking to Lisa about that.
So the question is, does she need something to guide her at a higher level, or is it pretty clear that if a county brings in, she responds to it in certain ways?
You mean if a city?
I'm sorry, city. That's what I mean.
I think in order to set up, if she wants guidelines, and that assumes, to me at least, that we're going to say, you go out and be proactive about this. And I think our goal in the past has been mostly when a city brings us something, we're reactive to that, and within that, what we've basically said is we'll look at what they're offering, we'll look at what they're doing. The one policy we have said is we're not going to help one city take business from another city.
Right.
Within the county. Now, it doesn't stop us from taking business from any other
county
outside the county, but within, we said we wouldn't do that. And I think that's, that's a policy that I think
Oh, there you is.
we should
Lisa's here.
stick with.
Lisa, could you help us here? We were talking about the need for guidelines and where they would restrict us in some way for economic development tools and incentives, or what did you mean by a vision? Could you?
Well, and I think Commissioner Wynn touched on it. I think it has been a while since, as a court, everybody sat down and kind of talked about what type of tools they'd like to use. And there are other tools out there. And some of those tools, though, there are issues using those tools. Like the 381, if we use that, unlike tax abatements or the tax increment financing, those dollars that we put into that don't affect our effective tax rate. But if we start to utilize the 381 tool, it could affect that. So those are some things we have to look at, but there could be instances where we still may want to use those. But I guess that was more what I was looking for, is coming up with, are we going to really get into working with small businesses? Are we only going to be looking at the large companies with the large amount of employment? So maybe those are some of the things that we need to come together and get a vision on what we're going to focus our incentives on.
Or a strategy.
A strategy.
Yeah, right, gotcha. That's what it sounded like. What direction do you want me to go in, right? Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Were you there all the time, or did you come in? I just came in when I heard you. Oh, okay. Because I didn't see you. So do we need to develop a strategy for economic development? Or is that, you feel like you already have one?
I think that's a positive to do that and develop.
I don't know about countywide, but I know in my precinct, Arlington Economic Development essentially is a standalone effort. And Mansfields and Grand Prairies and Pantego and, okay.
Why don't we say review and update strategy for economic development?
I mean, in my area, I think pretty much every city has got an economic development person who's working on projects at any one time. So I think it's beneficial.
Lise, you okay with this one? I mean, this is an objective, obviously, you're going to be heavily involved in. So no matter what it says you can get whatever guidelines you're looking for, I guess. Okay, super. Thanks. Any other objectives for number 3? External number 3?
I wonder if Commissioner Brooks, we talk about human infrastructure. And part of that is how do we bring, we know in the future, the population of Tarrant County is going to be mostly minority majority, Hispanics, Asian, blacks, and so forth. How do we help some of these community groups to improve their leadership capacity or educational capacity and so forth? Does that have to do with human services or not? Maybe do we have to do
I think it has to do with collaboration.
Okay. So I'm just want to lay it out there maybe. I'm listening.
You mean proactively collaborate up there?
Right.
Gotcha. I see.
Right.
I was looking for the word collaboration.
To me, proactively collaborate gives me the authority to work with whoever I need to work with to accomplish just about anything I want to accomplish.
But the key here is, do we want to establish a county-wide strategy with the collaboration and interaction of the various multiple departments within Tarrant County to produce the end result that we want? For example,
As long as it doesn't tie my hands.
Of course. So you satisfied with objective 2 there as a good way to improve human?
Well, I think he was referring up here.
Yeah, but
I think, isn't that where you were alluding to?
yeah,
Commissioner
that phrase, proactively collaborate with Tarrant County cities and stakeholders, covers a multitude of programs.
I'm talking about, do we need to establish another objective to cover the human.
If I were to establish other objectives, they would include more than just educational outcomes. It would include the elimination of poverty, the provision of opportunity, and those are things that are going to be difficult to accomplish in the short run and difficult to measure. But you can work on them by proactively collaborating with others in programs that do those sorts of things. And I don't think we need to name
Okay. Okay.
everything that, reentry programs certainly fit under some of that. It's about giving our residents the tools, both education, financial, and opportunity-wise, to fully actualize themselves as members of our economy.
I'm just wondering whether we need to establish an objective under what you just said. If you're satisfied with what we have,
If
then
we were going to establish an objective, it would be what I just said.
I guess your point is, Andy, that if we don't establish an objective, you may not have any initiatives in that area, right?
or we may have initiatives that are not integrated together to produce the outcome that we want.
All right, so give me a D and an objective 4.
But I also think, as you're, well, go ahead and put what you want. I think as we get the initiatives back from everybody, if we see specific initiatives that are missing, then I think we would address those with under whatever goal or objective we felt like they needed to be. And if we don't see something like on the reentry, if we don't see that under any of them, then either we have to develop a new objective under one of the goals, or we
Take out all that consultant speak you've got up there.
What do you want?
Proactively collaborate with our stakeholders to design and implement programs that empower our residents through education, employment opportunity, and they told me in high school you couldn't have a two phrase series, so there's got to be an and. Education, employment, and
Other areas of need?
The horse is about dead.
it's on life support.
Through education and employment opportunities. You're looking for one more thing?
Okay, education and employment opportunities. No. take out and give me a comma. I just thought of a third one. Education, employment opportunities, and
Just lost it, huh?
Hate it when that happens.
housing. To
For education, employment, and
All right. Ready to do next steps, or we still have some tweaking to do?
I want to tweak that a little bit, but I don't need to tweak it in this meeting.
Okay, all right. Next steps. We need to get the initiatives, we need to assign out the objectives, I guess, GK, to your folks, right? You and I will work together on that to come to develop initiatives to come back to you with. And part of that, again, I'm speaking to you, GK, do you want them to do a charter on the initiatives so that when they bring it back to the Commissioner's Court, there's a little more detail on it?
You know, I think what we need to do is we'll develop draft initiatives to bring back to the court to make sure that they're satisfied with what those initiatives are.
Wait a minute. When you say we, define we.
Will be our office working with the various departments, with Jack.
Okay. And I mean, I guess what I would have thought about is develop a template that you want these initiatives to fit within.
Well, we have a charter template.
Right, it's a one-page deal, so it's not overkill. It's got milestones on it, owners, timelines. I mean, those are milestones.
And so those would be given to each department, elected official, whomever, and ask for them to go through the 6 goals that we have in the gazillion objectives and put in what they feel like would be appropriate for their departments.
Well, no, I think this is still at a higher level, right? So,
Okay, explain to me why you feel like it's at a higher level.
So, some of these won't be done by departments, probably, right?
Well, but at that point, I agree, and I think each department can make that decision. But I don't believe you or me or anybody else has the overall reaching knowledge of being able to determine that the district clerk may not be a part of a particular one of these deals. And by you immediately stepping out and limiting it, it's kind of like you're saying, we're going to limit your ability to think out of the box. And so we've all sat here and established our goals. We've listened to the objectives. They have given input, I hope, where they felt like they wanted to. And I don't see now why we should begin to say, well, we'll take care of developing the initiatives for you.
No, we weren't going to do that. I think they were going to do that.
Well,
so I guess here's the
no,
question.
That's not what you said. I just asked that, and you said, no, we're going to do it at a much higher level. And a much higher level is different from saying we're going to give them the initiative template and say fill it out based upon what you feel like is appropriate within each one of those goals.
So we could do it that way. I mean, you could say, let me just see if I'm reading you right. To every department, if you think you link to a particular objective, we'd like you to identify the potential initiatives for that objective.
They got her lunch here. Somewhere.
Okay.
Because I think otherwise you're going to be trying to make determinations as to what they should be doing.
Wouldn't have been me. I guess the other way to do that would be to pick kind of a focal point. So if it was the one on employees, you would pick HR to actually establish the initiative. So Tina, Robin would be working on those initiatives.
I think that they're going to establish initiatives that may cross
Oh, they will.
all over, but I think that, and they may have no idea about, one of the departments may have no idea about the metrics or anything as it pertains to the health plan. And I guess what I'm saying is define when we define an initiative, what should that mean? Should that mean what my department alone can do toward accomplishing an initiative? But if HR comes out and says the initiative is going to be everybody gets a physical, well, that's not going to be something that a department would put in because they've not seen that initiative come forward yet.
Right.
So what is your train of thought?
Well, the way you normally do these is you say, who has the biggest impact? It doesn't have to be one department, but it would be, so if you're working on something around health, who would the usual suspects be to develop the initiatives around health? I would guess Mary Lou, somebody else.
Somebody from our public hospital.
Somebody from the hospital. So you would take those three as taking the lead on it. It wouldn't be us and it wouldn't be me, right? Somebody that actually does the work, right? So I was thinking almost like the Pareto principle. Who has the big impact on this particular objective so that they would be the most knowledgeable to look at what are the most strategic things to do?
And I think that's where they'll come from. But, maybe HR believes that they've got something they could put into that. And if we later decide, no, we don't like that, we can always kick the initiative.
I'm good with that then. Okay. I get you. I'm fine. Okay, so develop draft initiatives for each objective by department.
That they feel like pertains to or that they feel like their department could participate in. But we do need to develop some sort of a template that is going to, so that we make sure we get all this in a consistent manner.
Okay.
I think we need to kind of combine the judge's approach and with your suggestion. What I meant by that is, for example, under objective 1 of goal number 1 there, we can say that the auditor office, the administration, and the budget office will work together to come up with certain initiatives, right? But other departments would also have an opportunity, if they want to weigh in on that objective, they can. But that way we have someone is taking the lead,
right?
But then other departments will also have an opportunity to weigh in too. So during the process, we know that the lead will be those 3 departments, but then the other department, like the district clerk, if he want to weigh in on that, then he'll be creating some initiatives, and if it makes sense, we include it. If it doesn't, then we'll eliminate it.
So, Commissioner Wynn, do we do that in 2 sequences where we say, okay, let's...
At the same time.
Okay, all right. Okay. So develop draft initiatives for each department, each objective by department, as well as choose cross-organizational owners for each one to develop the initiative, right? So you're saying for this object, pick an objective, any objective, right? This one here, we say the best 2 people are audit and budget, and so those 2 are going to come up with something, and there'll be input given from other groups to them for that initiative, if they think they want to give any input. And we need a template to put it on. We do have a 1-page template. We'll have to talk through whether it's 1 page to keep it simple, and it hopefully will serve the purpose. It's called a charter, right? It defines the business case for why you do the objective, how you might measure it, what's in scope, what's out of scope, who owns it, what are the milestones, the normal stuff for project planning.
Right, but you see, under any of these objective, IT is going to have a part of it, like objective 3, for example. Okay, so what I'm saying is if we establish the leaders for a certain objective, and then you also allow other departments to weigh in as well, because they may have a function in the accomplishment of such objective. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I hope I'm not sure if I'm making sense. So
I don't believe that there was ever an intention to exclude anyone from having input on any of the initiatives, quite frankly.
To coming up with the initiatives, right?
So I'm going to put it in 2-fold. So develop draft initiatives for each objective. And who does that? some cross-organizational owners, like audit budget, right? Individually, then, I mean, also, each department can contribute to whatever initiatives make sense for their department, and they can be either included by these people or not as part of that. So each department also develop
You're putting that from the timeline standpoint, should we say that, send this out to all the departments, say here's kind of where we are, here's what we're expecting, make any comments that you may have about the goals or the objectives, and get those to GK's office by X date, and then by some date in the very near future, we would get this list of, based upon each one of these, here's going to be the lead department, elected official, whomever. It's going to.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing that we had in our PowerPoint that hadn't gone all the way through was the timeline issue.
Right, right. Okay, third thing we need is ensure that we have a template for this.
Jack, we may need to tweak that template a little bit.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
So the initiatives are usually measured on while they're happening through milestone achievement, right? Project management would be, is it done on time? Is it done within budget? Is it done in a quality fashion, right? So each of the initiatives is just like a project, and so it would say, are you on track, and is it a quality outcome? When you get done with that initiative, good question, though, Christina, you say, so what difference does that make to a process or output measure that I care about that aligns to some higher level goal? And yeah, we need to identify those as well.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think a part of that template should be, if this is your initiative, what's the baseline that we're going to use to measure improvement in that particular initiative or success in that particular initiative?
Right.
The metric or whatever.
Include the metrics, yeah. I think there's one, it's already on there, but I'll just have to make sure it's specific that there's actually two measures, right? Milestones on time and schedule and budget. So what? What difference did it make when you did this? Well, it affected employee well-being or something like that, right? So we develop those initiatives, we have input to those initiatives on a standardized template, and we bring them back to you. So when does that need to be? Now, your last meeting is December 10th for the year, right? So it's got to be January sometime?
It's going to have to be in January.
Okay.
And that conforms to the timeline, Jack, in the PowerPoint.
Do you want me to put that up there?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that'd be good. That's on page 10 and 11. Steps.
Right, so here we are.
Really needs to go down. Come on down with.
We're here,
Yeah.
where we're saying, I started this actually this morning, by the way. It has to be totally revised, but I started building the strategic plan document where I'll put all this, the goals and objectives and stuff in it. But here's what we're talking about with the initiatives. So then the next step after that is, well, that's really the scorecard. So we're really dealing right now with just this. And so the question is, it's got to be one of your January court meetings, right? When is your first court meeting in January? Does anybody know?
The second Tuesday.
It's it's the second Tuesday, but, well, it's not going to be the first court meeting in January.
That would be the 14th, the first meeting.
So it won't be that one. It will be that one.
It's not going to be that date, because we're going to, by the time we get to the 14th, we're going to have a month's worth of activity for the court.
21st.
And so if you get, for each initiative, you have a charter that you need to look at, one page that talks about what the initiative is, when it's going to be done, how to be measured, who's going to own it, those kind of things. Give me a lot of initiatives. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just point out that there's a lot of people out in December? There's a lot of work to be done. If you need collaboration, you can run into problems because you can't get to who you need to get with. I've been here a long time. It's hard to get things done in December.
Yeah. What do you think, GK?
Well, I agree with Renee. Let's just say January, okay? I mean, you tie me down to a date. I think you want quality rather than just something on a specific date.
Late.
Absolutely. You know, because we talked about it in here, but that doesn't mean that everyone that's going to be involved is here. It's going to take an educational process yet, too.
There's a question of prioritization, too, right? I mean, because you may feel certain goals are more important than others. You may feel certain objectives are more important than others. And therefore, certain initiatives would be more important than others. So the question is, how do we address that? I mean, the way I've addressed it in the past is I got the governing body to prioritize the goals and prioritize the objectives, and therefore we knew that the initiatives that aligned to those were more important. So if, mobility comes out as a high one, which it would, then any initiatives around mobility, you're probably going to say, let's move on. But maybe there will be some others that will be very important. Anything we put on the board here was important, but some are more important than others. So I don't know if there's a prioritization thing. If you handed me 35 charters, I got to know what you want. I mean, we have to decide how to work on that. So, again, you can do it by prioritizing the objectives, and then the initiatives that align to those objectives that are higher priority. Usually, those initiatives are higher priority.
We do it during the meeting.
And we could even do that you can do that by multi-voting.
I think we need to go through this step first, and then see what the results are. Court members, I'll tell you what you all did today. The objectives, you have created a substantial amount of objectives that we're going to have to tie initiatives to. And so you very well may have to prioritize that, because we may not have enough resources to do all the initiatives and still do what the county as a whole does every day.
And another way to look at that that's more palatable is sequence the objectives, right? So they don't have to be thrown off the table, but if you have, I don't know how many we have, 6 times 4, 25 objectives, let's say, then which 10 are the ones that are the most important to get started on now? We'll get to the other ones when we get to them. It's not that they're they are less important because we sequence them out. But that's another way to look at it. So if you were going to vote on which ones do we think are the most important to start now, then the initiatives that align to those would fall in line too. We don't have to do that today, but that's just something that we have to do for this particular step here of prioritizing initiatives, I think. So you want to wait, GK, until we get this, no matter what the quantity is, could be 30 or 40 initiatives.
Well, the thing is that how is the court going to make a decision today without that information?
Yeah, the only thing you could do today is to try to prioritize the objectives in some way by voting which ones do you think are the most important ones, right?
No,
I think the
I don't think we've got the,
Information.
I think our seats have about reached the capacity of our rooms.
we
Well, then-
exceeded the bandwidth.
I agree with you.
Then we're done.
We're getting, yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
Our stomach is
We-
doing the talking right now.
You did a great job, so fine, we're done. Thank you very much.
We're adjourned.